The call that shattered my world came on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon, right as I was finishing up a client meeting at Morris and Associates. I'm Caitlin, a corporate lawyer who spent the last decade building a reputation for integrity, only to discover my own family had been secretly destroying it. Ms. Pierce? Frank's voice wavered slightly. This is Frank Santos from First National. There seems to be an irregularity with your sister's mortgage payments. I frowned, shuffling papers on my desk. My sister's mortgage? I think you have the wrong person. No, that's actually why I'm calling. You're listed as a co-signer on Gwendolyn Pierce's mortgage for the property at 1542 Maple Avenue. The pen I'd been holding clattered to the desk. That's impossible. I never signed anything. Our records show otherwise. The paperwork was processed 6 months ago. Your parents brought in all the documentation. My parents? The room started spinning as pieces clicked into place. Their nervous behavior at Christmas, the way they changed the subject when I mentioned Gwen's new house, their insistence that I signed some routine paperwork during Mom's birthday dinner. I need to see these documents immediately, I managed to say, my voice surprisingly steady despite the earthquake happening in my chest. Of course, I can email them now, but... Frank hesitated. There's more. The payments are 3 months behind. I gripped the edge of my desk. How much? Just over $12,000. The number hit me like a physical blow. I thanked Frank mechanically and ended the call, then immediately dialed Griffin's number. He'd been my best friend since law school, and right now I needed both a friend and a lawyer. Hey, stranger, he answered cheerfully. My family forged my signature. The words tumbled out. They put me on Gwen's mortgage without telling me. Jesus Christ. Griffin's tone shifted instantly to professional mode. Don't do anything yet. I'm coming to your office. 20 minutes later, Griffin was examining the documents Frank had emailed while I paced behind him. Look at this. He pointed to a signature. They didn't even try hard to match your handwriting. I leaned in, stomach churning. The signature was clearly my mother's attempt at copying mine. The K had her distinctive curl. My phone buzzed. Mom's smiling face appeared on the screen. I showed it to Griffin. Answer it, he mouthed. Stay calm. I took a deep breath and hit accept. Hi, Mom. Sweetie, are you free for dinner tonight? Your father's making his famous lasagna. The casual tone made my blood boil. Actually, funny you should call. I just had an interesting chat with Frank Santos. Silence, then. Oh, honey, we were going to tell you. Tell me what? That you forged my signature? That you made me legally responsible for Gwen's house without my knowledge? It's not like that. Mom's voice rose defensively. Gwen needed help, and you're doing so well. The bank wouldn't approve her loan otherwise. So you committed fraud? My voice cracked. Do you have any idea what this could do to my career? Don't be dramatic, Caitlin. We're family. Families help each other. Help each other? Or help Gwen? The words tasted bitter. I'm coming over tonight. Have Gwen there too. We're going to fix this. Honey, I hung up, hands shaking. Griffin was already pulling up more documents on his laptop. There's definitely grounds for legal action, he said quietly. But are you sure you want to go that route? I sank into my chair, suddenly exhausted. I don't know what I want except answers. Then let's get them. Griffin started making notes. But first we need to protect you. I'm seeing red flags all over these documents. What do you mean? He turned the screen toward me. These mortgage papers? They're just the tip of the iceberg. There's language here suggesting other accounts, other obligations. We need to find out exactly what they've tied you to. I stared at the documents, my parents' betrayal spreading like poison through every happy memory I had of them. All those family dinners, all those proud smiles when I made partner, were they just grooming me to be their unwitting financial safety net? Griffin? My voice was barely a whisper. Help me burn it all down. He reached across the desk and squeezed my hand. We'll do better than that. We'll make sure they face every consequence they've earned, starting with dinner tonight. I nodded, rage and determination crystallizing into something cold and clear. They wanted to use my success against me? Fine. They were about to learn exactly how successful I could be at fighting back. Griffin's office looked like a crime scene by midnight, with documents spread across every surface and yellow sticky notes, creating a web of connections on his whiteboard. We'd skipped the family dinner. My phone had blown up with texts from Mom, Dad, and Gwen, but I'd ignored them all. This was more important. Look at this, Griffin said, holding up a credit card statement. A platinum card opened in your name 3 months ago. The address is your parents' house. I grabbed the paper, scanning the charges. I never applied for this card. And these purchases? Designer bags, spa treatments, restaurant bills. This is all Gwen's spending pattern. They're getting sloppy, Griffin muttered, typing furiously on his laptop. The card was open with an online application. Want to bet they used your social security number? A knock at the door made us both jump. It was Solstice from the firm's financial crimes division, carrying 3 cups of coffee. Thought you could use reinforcements? She said, handing them out. Griffin filled me in. This is seriously messed up, Caitlin. I took a grateful sip. Can you help us trace anything else they might have opened in my name? Already on it. Solstice pulled up a chair. I've got access to databases that'll show us every account linked to your SSN, but you should probably sit down for this. My stomach dropped. How bad? 3 credit cards, 2 personal loans, and she paused. There's something weird with your investment accounts. Griffin leaned forward. Weird how? Someone's been using them as collateral for other loans. The paperwork looks legitimate at first glance, but the timestamps don't add up. These documents were backdated. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Gwen. Please pick up. Mom's crying and Dad's furious. We need to talk about this as a family. I showed the message to Griffin. Reply, he advised. But don't give anything away. We need to know how deep this goes before confronting them. I typed, still at work. We'll talk tomorrow. Solstice whistled softly, staring at her screen. Caitlin, when was the last time you checked your credit score? 6 months ago? It was over 800. It's 642 now. The room spun slightly. Everything I'd worked for, my financial reputation, my carefully built credit history, all of it damaged because my family decided to use me as their personal ATM. There's something else, Griffin said slowly, examining a document. These loan applications, they're not just using your current income. They're listing future projections based on your career track. They're banking on your next promotion. How would they even know about that? I demanded. Because Dad's golf buddy is on the firm's board, I realized, the pieces clicking together. He must have mentioned the partnership track discussions. Solstice started organizing papers into piles. Okay, here's what we know. They've created roughly $300,000 in debt under your name. The mortgage is the biggest piece, but these other accounts suggest they're building a safety net. My guess? Gwen's house of cards is about to collapse, and they're preparing for it. By sacrificing me instead, I said bitterly. Griffin grabbed a fresh legal pad. We need to document everything tonight. Tomorrow we'll start a damage control. First step is freezing your credit and filing fraud alerts. Then we dispute every account they open without authorization. But the mortgage? I hesitated. If we do that, Gwen could lose her house. That's not your problem, Solstice said firmly. They made their choices. Now they get to face the consequences. My phone lit up with another text from Mom. We did this for your sister. You've always been the strong one. Please understand. The strong one. That's what they'd always called me, their reliable daughter who could handle anything. Now I understood. It wasn't a compliment. It was their justification for taking advantage of me. I need to know one thing, I said, looking at Griffin. Can we prove they forged my signature beyond any doubt? He nodded grimly. The timestamps alone prove you couldn't have signed these documents. You were in court during half these application dates. Plus, we can get handwriting analysis done. Good. I stood up, suddenly energized by anger, because tomorrow I'm not just freezing my credit. I'm going to make sure they never do this to anyone else again. Solstice raised an eyebrow. What are you thinking? I'm thinking it's time to talk to Frank Santos again. If they forged documents at his bank, he needs to know. And once he files his report, I smiled without humor. Well, fraud investigations tend to uncover all sorts of interesting things. Griffin started gathering the documents. You sure about this? Once we start, there's no going back. I looked at the text messages from my family, each one assuming I would cave, that I would understand, that I would sacrifice myself to protect them, just like I always had. I'm sure, I said. It's time they learned what the strong one is really capable of. The smell of Dad's lasagna filled the house as I walked in without knocking. My parents and Gwen sat at the dining room table, a perfect family portrait except for their tense expressions. The manila envelope in my hand felt heavy with proof of their betrayal. Finally, Mom said, trying to sound normal, we saved you a plate. I dropped the envelope on the table, cutting her off. Let's skip the pretense. Here's everything I found last night. Want to explain or should I start? Dad reached for the envelope, but I snatched it back. No, you've done enough handling my paperwork. Don't take that tone with us, he snapped. We're your parents. Parents don't commit identity theft against their children. Gwen burst into tears. It wasn't supposed to be like this. The house was a good investment. I just needed help with the down payment. The house? I laughed harshly. This goes way beyond the house, Gwen. 3 credit cards, personal loans, using my investment accounts as collateral. Mom's face went pale. How did you? I'm a lawyer, Mom. Did you forget that when you were forging my signature? Or did you just count on me being too much of a pushover to fight back? We did it because we love you both, Dad said, his voice rising. Your sister needed help and you had the means to help her? I finished. Funny how you never asked if I wanted to. I'll pay everything back, Gwen sobbed. I promise. I just need time. Time? I pulled out her credit card statements. You spent $12,000 at Nordstrom last month, another $8,000 at that spa in Vegas. How exactly are you planning to pay this back? The silence was deafening. That's what I thought. I turned to my parents. And you too. Using Dad's connection at my firm to get insider information about my career prospects? That's a new low. Mom stood up suddenly. You don't understand what it's like, watching one daughter succeed while the other struggles. We had to balance things out. Balance things out, my voice cracked, by destroying my credit, by risking my career, my law license. Don't be dramatic, Dad started, but I cut him off. Dramatic? Let me tell you what's dramatic. Tomorrow morning I'm meeting with Frank Santos. I'm filing fraud reports on every account you opened in my name. Then I'm contacting the police. Gwen's sobs turned to hiccups. You wouldn't? Try me. Please. Mom reached for my hand. I pulled away. We can figure this out as a family. Your sister's house is not my problem. I turned to Gwen. You have 3 months of missed mortgage payments. How were you planning to fix that? She looked down at the table. Mom and Dad said they'd help. With what money? I demanded. The credit cards in my name are maxed out. The loans are behind on payments. Where exactly is this help coming from? More silence. That's what I thought. I pulled out one final document. This is a formal statement denying any knowledge of or consent to these accounts. I'm filing it with every credit bureau and bank involved. You'll ruin us, Dad said quietly. The words hit like a slap. No, you ruined yourselves, and you tried to ruin me in the process. I'm scared, Gwen whispered. I can't lose my house. I don't know how to fix this. For a moment, looking at my little sister's tear-stained face, I wavered. Then I remembered the methodical way they'd stolen my identity, planned their deception, used my success against me. You should be scared. Actions have consequences. Welcome to yours. Mom started crying then, big theatrical sobs that used to make me cave instantly. We're family. How can you do this to your family? Family? I gathered my documents. Family doesn't steal from each other. Family doesn't commit fraud. Family doesn't sacrifice one child to enable another's spending addiction. Caitlin, please. Gwen reached for me. I'll do anything. Just don't report this. We can work something out. I looked at them. My sobbing mother, my angry father, my desperate sister. The family that had shaped me, raised me, and then betrayed me without hesitation. You have 24 hours, I said finally. Either you come clean to Frank yourselves or I do it for you. Either way, this ends tomorrow. I walked out, ignoring their calls behind me. In my car, my phone buzzed with a text from Griffin. How did it go? I typed back. They're still trying to manipulate me, but tomorrow they learn what happens when the strong one finally stands up for herself. Starting the engine, I caught a glimpse of them through the dining room window, huddled together, probably already planning their next move. But this time I was 10 steps ahead, and I wasn't backing down. Solstice's office looked like a war room when I arrived the next morning. Multiple screens displayed financial records, and a printer hummed continuously, spitting out more evidence. You're not going to believe this, she said, spinning her monitor toward me. Your sister's spending isn't random. There's a pattern. I leaned in, scanning the transactions. What do you mean? Look at the timing. Every major purchase coincides with your parents' social events, country club dinners, charity galas, board member meetings. She was keeping up appearances, I realized, making sure everyone thought the family was doing well. Exactly, but here's where it gets interesting. Solstice pulled up another screen. I found a shadow account. Your parents have been moving money around, trying to cover the tracks. My phone buzzed. A text from Dad. We're meeting with Frank this afternoon. Please reconsider your position. They're trying to get ahead of me. I showed Solstice the message, but they don't know what we found. Speaking of finding things, she hesitated. There's something else. Your sister's been applying for jobs using your credentials. What? She handed me a stack of papers. Found these in the background check databases. She's been submitting resumes with your law degree and bar admission, just changing the name. The room spun slightly. That's not just fraud. That could get her arrested. It gets worse, Griffin said from the doorway. I hadn't even heard him come in. Just got off the phone with a headhunter friend. Gwen interviewed for 3 positions using your credentials. One company was about to make her an offer. I sank into a chair. Did she actually think she could pull that off? People would figure it out eventually, Solstice said, but by then she'd have a foot in the door and a salary history to leverage. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Frank. Your parents are here. They're telling a very different story. Please come to the bank immediately. Of course they are, I muttered. They're trying to spin this before I can present evidence. Griffin grabbed his briefcase. Let's go. I've got everything we need to prove the forgeries. Wait, Solstice called up one more document. Take this too. It's proof that your parents accessed your investment accounts without authorization. The IP address is traced back to their home computer. The drive to the bank felt surreal. Through the lobby windows, I could see my parents sitting in Frank's office, Mom dabbing at her eyes with a tissue while Dad gestured emphatically. Ready? Griffin asked quietly. I straightened my spine. More than ready. Frank's office fell silent as we walked in. Mom's eyes widened at the sight of Griffin. This is a family matter, Dad started to say. No, I cut him off. This is a criminal matter. Frank, I have proof that my parents and sister committed multiple counts of fraud using my identity. Now wait just a minute. Dad stood up. Sit down, Griffin said firmly. Unless you prefer to have this conversation at the police station. Frank looked between us, clearly uncomfortable. Your parents say they had your verbal permission. They didn't. I started laying out documents. Here are the forged signatures. Here are the unauthorized account access logs. And here, I placed Gwen's fake resumes on top, is evidence of my sister committing employment fraud using my credentials. Mom burst into fresh tears. We were desperate. Gwen needed... I don't care what Gwen needed, I snapped. You committed crimes, multiple crimes, and now you have a choice. Frank picked up the forgery evidence, his face growing darker as he read. This is very serious. We know, Griffin said. That's why we're giving you a chance to handle this internally first. But if you don't, our next stop is the district attorney's office. Dad's face had gone from red to pale. You would send your own sister to jail? You would steal your daughter's identity, I countered, forge her signature, use her career to prop up your lies. Frank cleared his throat. I'll need to report this to our fraud department and freeze all associated accounts immediately. That's not necessary, Mom began. Yes, it is, I said firmly. And here's what's going to happen next. You're going to admit to everything. You're going to close every fraudulent account. And you're going to face whatever consequences the bank decides on. Or, Dad challenged, or I press criminal charges. Your choice. The silence stretched thick and heavy. Finally, Frank spoke. I need to make some calls. Please wait here. As he left the office, I looked at my parents, really looked at them. They seemed smaller somehow, their self-righteous anger crumbling into fear. You did this, Mom whispered. You destroyed our family. No, I stood up, gathering my evidence. You did that all by yourselves. I'm just making sure you can't destroy anyone else. My phone buzzed one last time, a message from Solstice. Found more. When you're done there, you need to see this. I showed Griffin the message. He nodded grimly. The day wasn't over yet, and something told me the worst was still to come. Back at the office, Solstice was pacing, her usual calm demeanor shattered. She thrust a stack of papers at me the moment I walked in. Look at this. She pointed to a series of transactions. Your parents' shadow account? It's not just about covering Gwen's spending. They've been running a small-scale Ponzi scheme through the country club. Griffin grabbed the documents. What kind of scheme? They've been investing other members' money, promising returns from some exclusive fund. But the money's just being shuffled around to pay earlier investors and fund Gwen's lifestyle. My legs went weak. How much? Nearly $2 million. Solstice pulled up a spreadsheet. And guess whose investment accounts they use as proof of their success? Mine. The word tasted like ash. They showed people my portfolio to convince them to invest. Exactly. Your success made their scam believable. My phone rang. Frank again. I put it on speaker. Caitlin, we've got a problem. Your parents left the bank and immediately tried to withdraw large sums from multiple accounts. Were they successful? No, we froze everything in time. But, he hesitated, they're claiming you're trying to extort them. They're threatening to report you to the Bar Association. I laughed bitterly. Let them try. Frank, I need to tell you something else. They've been running an investment scam. A commotion outside interrupted me. Through the glass walls, I saw my father storming through the office, Mom and Gwen trailing behind him. We need security, Solstice said, reaching for her phone. No, I stood up. Let them come. Dad burst in, his face purple with rage. You think you can destroy us? We'll take you down with us. Really? I held up the Ponzi scheme evidence. Want to explain this to everyone first? The color drained from his face. Behind him, Mom gasped. Where did you get that? Does it matter? What matters is that you didn't just steal from me. You stole from everyone who trusted you. Gwen pushed forward. It wasn't stealing. Dad was helping people invest. In what? I demanded. There is no investment fund. Just you living beyond your means while they use my success to lure in more victims. We can fix this, Mom pleaded. If you just give us time. Time for what? To find more victims? To forge more documents? To steal more identities? You ungrateful. Dad started forward, but Griffin stepped between us. Think carefully about your next move, he warned. The police are already on their way. You called the police? Gwen's voice rose hysterically. No, Solstice said from her desk. The bank did. Standard procedure for attempted withdrawal after a fraud alert. As if on cue, 2 officers appeared in the doorway. Is there a problem here? Dad deflated visibly. Mom started crying again. But Gwen looked at me with pure hatred. You really want to do this? She hissed. Fine, but I'm not going down alone. I'll tell them everything. How you knew about the investments. How you helped set up the accounts. Except I didn't, I cut her off. And we both know it. But please, keep talking. The officers would love to hear about your employment fraud, too. The police moved into the room, taking statements. I watched as my family's facade crumbled completely. Mom's tears turned real. Dad's bluster gave way to defeat. And Gwen, my little sister, who I'd protected all our lives, sat in stony silence as the officers explained the charges. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Your parents owe me $200,000. They said you'd guarantee the investment. We need to talk. Then another. They promised returns from your hedge fund connections. And another. My retirement money. They said you were managing it. The messages kept coming. More victims, more lies, more lives destroyed by my family's deception. Griffin touched my arm. You okay? No, I said honestly, but I will be, because this ends today. I turned to the officers. I want to press charges, all of them, and I have evidence of additional financial crimes you need to see. You can't, Mom wailed. We're your family. I looked at them, really looked at them. My mother who taught me about integrity while helping forge my signature. My father who bragged about my success while using it to deceive others. My sister who took everything I earned and still wanted more. No, I said quietly, family doesn't do this. Family doesn't steal and lie and destroy lives. You're not my family anymore. You're just criminals who happen to share my DNA. The officers began leading them out. Gwen turned back at the door. I hope you're happy, she spat. You've ruined everything. I watched them go, feeling oddly peaceful. No, I whispered. I just stopped you from ruining anyone else. Solstice was already pulling up more records. There's going to be fallout from this. More victims will come forward. I know. I sat down at her desk. So let's find them first. Every last one. The day wasn't over, but for the first time since this started, I felt truly strong. Not their version of strong, the kind that enabled their crimes, but my own strength built on truth and justice, and I was just getting started. The victim statements kept coming in over the next week. Griffin and I had taken over the firm's conference room, walls now covered with photos and connecting lines like a crime show investigation board. Each new revelation felt like another punch to the gut. 14 victims so far, Griffin said, adding another photo. Most of them elderly members of the country club. Your parents really knew how to pick their targets. A knock at the door made us both look up. It was Frank, looking exhausted. You need to see this, he said, placing a USB drive on the table. We found hidden accounts, offshore ones. My heart sank. How much? Close to $3 million. They've been moving money to the Cayman Islands for months. Griffin whistled softly. That's not amateur hour anymore. That's serious financial crime. There's more. Frank hesitated. Some of the transfers, they were made from your office computer, late at night. I frowned. That's impossible. I never... The cleaning crew, Solstice said from the doorway. Remember how Gwen used to visit you at work, always staying late, saying she wanted to spend time with you? The pieces clicked together. She was using my computer after I left, with login credentials that matched yours perfectly, Solstice confirmed. She must have installed a keylogger during one of her visits. My phone buzzed, a call from the county jail. I ignored it, like I'd ignored the dozen others this week. The FBI wants to talk to you, Frank said quietly. This crossed state lines. It's federal now. Good. I stood up, stretching. Because I found something else they'll want to see. I pulled out a file I'd been saving. Inside were photos from my parents' social media, specifically their recent vacations. Look at the dates, I pointed. Every major withdrawal from the victims' accounts corresponds with a luxury trip. Here's Mom on a yacht in Greece, Dad golfing in Dubai, Gwen shopping in Paris. All funded with stolen money, Griffin realized, and posted online for everyone to see. They weren't even trying to hide it. Another knock. This time it was an elderly woman I recognized from the country club, Margaret, one of my mother's closest friends. I'm sorry to interrupt, she said softly, but I needed to tell you something. I gestured for her to sit. She pulled out an old photo, my high school graduation. In it, my parents beamed proudly while Gwen sulked in the background. Your mother told me something that day, Margaret said. She said she'd always have to work harder for Gwen because you were so naturally gifted, that you'd be fine on your own, but Gwen needed extra help. My throat tightened. She told you that 15 years ago? Yes, and now I realize they've been planning this for years, positioning you as the successful one, the strong one, so they could use your reputation to help Gwen. The revelation hit like a physical blow. My entire adult life, my career, my success, my reputation had been cultivated by them not with pride but with calculation. Mrs. Anderson called me this morning, Frank added. She lost her husband's life insurance money to your parents' scheme. She's going to lose her house. No, she won't, I said firmly, because we're going to find every penny they stole, starting with those offshore accounts. Griffin was already making calls. I know someone at the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit. We can expedite this. My phone buzzed again, this time a text from Mom. The lawyers say we could face 20 years. Please, sweetheart, help us one last time. I showed it to Griffin. They're still trying to manipulate you, he said gently, still trying to use your strength against you. I know. I turned to Margaret. How many other victims haven't come forward yet? She looked down. Many. They're ashamed, embarrassed. Your parents were so respected in the community. Then we'll help them too, I decided. All of them. Every last person they deceived. Solstice's computer pinged. Got something. A series of transfers to an account in Singapore, recent too, made right after your confrontation at the bank. They were planning their escape, Griffin realized. If we hadn't stopped them, they would have disappeared with everyone's money, I finished, leaving me to deal with the fallout. Another text from Mom. We're family. Families protect each other. I finally replied, yes, they do. That's why I'm protecting everyone else from you. Then I turned to the others. Let's get to work. We've got money to trace, victims to find, and justice to serve. Margaret touched my hand. You truly are the strong one, dear, just not in the way they intended. Looking at the evidence wall, the faces of people whose trust had been betrayed, whose lives had been upended, I felt that strength surge through me. Not the strength to enable crimes, but the strength to stop them. No, I said quietly, I'm just doing what they never had the strength to do. The right thing. The federal courthouse loomed before me as I clutched the final dossier. Every transaction, every victim, every lie meticulously documented. 2 FBI agents flanked me as we walked in, their presence both reassuring and surreal. You ready for this? Agent Torres asked quietly. I've been ready for weeks. The courtroom doors opened to reveal my family sitting with their lawyers. Mom's designer outfit had been replaced by modest business wear. Dad's golf tan had faded in Gwen. Gwen looked like a stranger in her plain black suit. The prosecution calls Caitlin Pierce, the DA announced. Walking to the witness stand, I felt their eyes burning into me. Mom mouthed, please, as I passed. I kept my gaze forward. Ms. Pierce, please tell the court about when you first discovered the financial irregularities involving your family. I took a deep breath. It started with a call from my bank about my sister's mortgage. For the next hour, I laid out everything, the forged signatures, the stolen identity, the Ponzi scheme, the offshore accounts. With each revelation, I watched their facades crumble further. And these luxury purchases? The DA held up photos from their social media, all made with victim funds. Yes, while elderly victims lost their life savings, my sister was posting Instagram stories from 5-star hotels in Paris. Gwen's lawyer stood up. Objection. Prejudicial. Overruled, the judge said. Continue. The total amount stolen exceeds $5 million, I stated. They used my reputation, my credentials, and my identity to lure victims into their scheme. And the victims? The DA prompted. 28 confirmed so far, mostly elderly members of the country club, people who trusted my parents, who trusted our family name. Dad's lawyer tried next. Isn't it true that you benefited from your family's financial success? No, I said firmly. I earned everything I have. They stole everything they had. But surely you knew. What I knew, I cut in, was that my parents raised me to believe in integrity while secretly planning to use my success for their fraud. What I knew was that my sister cried about needing help while spending stolen money on luxury goods. What I knew was that they destroyed lives while hiding behind my reputation. The courtroom fell silent. Your Honor, I continued, pulling out one final document. I have here a list of every victim, every dollar stolen, and every false investment promise made. I'm also providing evidence of additional offshore accounts we've uncovered. Mom started crying, not her usual theatrical sobs, but real, broken tears. Ms. Pierce, the judge leaned forward. You understand that this testimony will likely send your family to prison? Yes, Your Honor, and they understand that their actions sent innocent people into poverty. Gwen suddenly stood up. This isn't fair. You had everything. The perfect career, the perfect life. What about me? Order! The judge banged his gavel. What about Mrs. Anderson? I shot back. She's losing her house because of you. What about Mr. Roberts? He can't afford his wife's medical care anymore. What about— Enough, Dad shouted. We did it for you to make sure you'd always take care of your sister. The judge banged his gavel again. One more outburst and I'll clear the court. But I wasn't finished. You did it for yourselves. You did it because it was easier to steal than work, easier to lie than earn, easier to destroy lives than build them. The DA stood up. Your Honor, we'd like to enter these new documents into evidence. As the bailiff collected the files, I finally looked directly at my family. Mom had collapsed against Dad, her makeup streaked with tears. Dad stared straight ahead, his jaw clenched, and Gwen looked at me with such hatred it almost took my breath away. I hope you're happy, she hissed as I walked past. I stopped. No, I'm not happy. I'm devastated, but I'm also done protecting people who prey on others. Outside the courtroom, Griffin waited with Solstice and Frank. How did it go? Griffin asked. They'll be lucky to get minimum sentences, I said. The offshore accounts sealed it. Frank nodded grimly. The bank's already started the restitution process for the victims. And the FBI found 2 more accounts this morning, Solstice added, in Switzerland. My phone buzzed, a text from Mom. We can still fix this, please, for family. I deleted it without responding. Family wasn't about enabling crimes or protecting criminals. It was about doing what's right, even when it hurts. The sentencing is next week, I said quietly. Then it's really over. Griffin squeezed my shoulder. No, then justice finally begins. Walking out of the courthouse, I felt lighter somehow. The truth hadn't just set me free, it had given me the strength to set others free too, from lies, from manipulation, from fraud. And that was worth more than any family loyalty. The sentencing hearing was standing room only. Every victim had come to witness justice being served. Mrs. Anderson sat beside me, clutching my hand as the judge prepared to deliver the verdict. Before I announced the sentences, the judge began, Would any of the defendants like to make a final statement? Mom stood first, trembling. We made mistakes, terrible mistakes, but we did it out of love. No. I surprised myself by standing. Your Honor, may I speak? The judge nodded. Love doesn't steal retirement funds from elderly neighbors. Love doesn't forge signatures or commit identity theft. Love doesn't destroy lives while posting luxury vacation photos. What they did wasn't love, it was greed, pure and simple. Dad jumped up. How dare you? Mr. Pierce, sit down, the judge ordered. Based on the severity of these crimes, the systematic nature of the fraud, and the devastating impact on the victims, I hereby sentence Gordon Pierce to 18 years in federal prison, Angela Pierce to 15 years, Gwendolyn Pierce to 12 years. The room erupted in murmurs. Gwen collapsed in tears. Mom reached for Dad but was stopped by a bailiff. Additionally, the judge continued, all assets will be seized and liquidated to repay the victims. The offshore accounts will be frozen and repatriated. Mrs. Anderson squeezed my hand. Thank you, she whispered. I can keep my house now. As they led my family away, Gwen turned to me one last time. I'll never forgive you for this. I know, I said quietly, but the victims will never forgive you either. Outside the courthouse, Griffin handed me an envelope. The firm made a decision. They want you to head the new victim restitution program. I opened it to find an official letter. Using my experience to help other fraud victims? You're uniquely qualified, Solstice said, joining us. Who better to help people rebuild after betrayal? My phone buzzed. A message from Frank. First victim repayments going out today. You did good, Caitlin. Margaret approached with several other country club members. We're having dinner tonight to celebrate justice and new beginnings. Will you join us? Looking at their faces, no longer victims but survivors, I felt something shift inside me. I'd be honored. There's something else, Griffin said. remember that advice forum where you used to post about family drama?" I nodded. During the darkest days of discovering my family's betrayal, I found solace sharing my story online. Your posts went viral. People are calling you the fraud fighter. There's a support group forming for victims of family financial abuse. They want you to speak at their first meeting, Solstice added. Share your story. Help others find their strength. The courthouse doors opened again. As my family was led to separate transport vehicles, I watched them for the last time. Not as my parents and sister, but as criminals facing consequences. "Ready to go?" Griffin asked softly. "Almost." I turned to the gathered victims. Anyone who needs help rebuilding their credit, sorting out legal issues, or just needs someone to talk to. Here's my card. My door's always open. Mrs. Anderson hugged me. "You turned something terrible into something helpful. That's real strength." At dinner that night, surrounded by people who'd been hurt but were healing, I finally felt at peace. My phone lay silent. No more manipulative texts, no more guilt trips, no more lies. "A toast," Margaret raised her glass, "to truth, justice, and the courage to fight for both." "And to family," I added, looking around the table. "The kind we choose, not the kind that chooses to hurt us." Later that night, I sat in my office looking at the victim restitution files. Each one represented someone who needed help rebuilding their life after betrayal, just like I had. Griffin knocked on my door. "First support group meeting is tomorrow. Sure you're ready?" I picked up a photo from my desk, the last family picture taken before everything unraveled. In it, we looked perfect, happy. But now I could see the calculation behind their smiles, the greed behind their poses. I turned the photo face down. I'm ready, because this isn't just about justice anymore. It's about prevention, about helping others spot the red flags I missed, about turning victims into survivors. "That's my strong one," he smiled. "No," I corrected him. "That's my choice. Being strong isn't about enabling bad behavior or protecting criminals. It's about standing up for what's right, even when it breaks your heart." I looked at the files again, at all the people waiting for help, for hope, for healing. So let's get to work. There are more stories to hear, more battles to fight, and more lives to rebuild. Because sometimes the happiest endings don't come from saving your family. They come from saving everyone else from them.
Hi, I'm Alex, and this is the story of how my sister tried to erase me from her wedding. When I arrived, I knew I didn't belong. The stares, the whispers, the way my name wasn't even included on the invitation. Only my son's. But nothing could have prepared me for the moment I saw my seat card. Single mother, waitress. That's all I was to them. Not a sister, not family. Just a reminder of what they thought was my failure. And as if that humiliation wasn't enough, my sister, standing in front of hundreds of guests, offered me the honor of serving at her wedding. I swallowed the humiliation, for my son's sake. But what happened next? That was something none of them expected. Because while I stayed silent, my son didn't. I walked into my tiny apartment, exhaustion weighing on me like a lead blanket. The scent of brewed coffee still clung to my uniform from the cafe, a constant reminder of the long hours I put in just to keep a roof over our heads. Dropping my purse onto the worn-out couch, I rubbed my temples, preparing myself for another evening of bills, homework, and whatever last-minute crisis an 8-year-old could cook up. Then, I saw it. A pristine white envelope sat on my counter, gold lettering shimmering in the dim light. My fingers hesitated before picking it up. The last time I'd received anything from my sister, Celeste, was a lawyer's notice when she helped my ex-husband Dorian fight for more custody. I exhaled sharply and flipped the envelope over. The elegant script read, "Mr. Dorian Whitmore and Ezekiel Langford." That knot in my stomach tightened. My name wasn't there. It wasn't a mistake. Celeste never made mistakes. Mom! Zeke's voice pulled me from my thoughts as he ran into the kitchen, tossing his backpack onto the chair. What's that? I forced a smile. Your aunt's getting married. His eyes lit up. Are we going? I swallowed. The last thing I wanted was to be anywhere near Celeste, Dorian, or Vivian. But I knew what Zeke wanted. To see his father. Yeah, baby, I murmured. We're going. The Grand Heights Hotel towered above us, its gold-framed doors gleaming under the city lights. Zeke bounced on his toes beside me, his excitement a sharp contrast to the sinking weight in my chest. I adjusted my dress, a simple navy blue piece that I had worn to job interviews and the occasional parent-teacher conference. It wasn't designer, but it was clean and pressed, and that was good enough. Inside, the ballroom was breathtaking, gleaming chandeliers, floral arrangements worth more than my rent, and guests in gowns and tuxedos that screamed wealth. A woman at the reception table glanced at my name before giving me a once-over, her expression barely masking her distaste. You're over there, she said, nodding toward the farthest table in the room. I gritted my teeth and walked forward, keeping my hand on Zeke's shoulder. As we approached our table, I felt my stomach drop. Other guests had name tags with elegant titles. Grayson family, Whitmore family. Mine? Single mother, waitress. And my son's? Single mother's child. My chest tightened. I reached out, flipping Zeke's card over before he could see it, but I was too late. His small brows furrowed. Mom, what does that mean? Nothing, sweetheart, I said, my voice calm. Just a joke. But it wasn't a joke. It was a message. I barely had time to sit before Celeste swept over, the picture of Grace in her designer gown. She smiled, a sharp, predatory thing. Oh, Alex! You made it! Her voice dripped with fake warmth. I wasn't sure if you'd feel comfortable here. I smiled back, just as fake. Wouldn't miss it. Vivian, Dorian's mother, approached, her jewelry glinting in the dim light. I'm shocked you showed up, she said with a smirk. I thought you'd be too busy waiting tables. I clenched my jaw. They wanted me to react, to snap, to yell, to storm out. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction. Mom, Zeke whispered, tugging my sleeve. Can we leave? Before I could answer, the microphone screeched and Celeste's voice filled the ballroom. Before we begin, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge a very special guest tonight. My blood ran cold. Everyone, my sister Alexandra, is here with us. She's always been hardworking. She's a waitress, after all. Laughter rippled through the crowd. Celeste smirked, feeding off the attention. Since you're experienced, why not help serve the guests? It'd be a waste of talent otherwise. The room erupted in laughter. I gripped my glass so tightly I thought it might shatter. My vision blurred at the edges, but I forced my breathing to stay even. Zeke's small fingers curled into my arm. He was shaking. I wanted to scream, to grab my son and storm out of this place, to tell Celeste exactly what kind of person she was in front of her perfect, hand-picked audience. But I didn't. Instead, I smiled. Slowly, deliberately. I took a sip of water and set my glass down with perfect composure. The laughter died down. The guests shifted awkwardly, sensing something was off. Celeste's smug grin faltered. She expected me to break. I wouldn't. Zeke turned to me, his voice barely above a whisper. Mom! He looked up at me, confusion clouding his bright eyes. Why do they hate you so much? Because, sweetheart, I whisper, squeezing his hand. Some people can't stand seeing others rise after they tried to break them. Zeke stares at me, his small brows furrowed in thought. I can almost see the wheels turning in his head, trying to make sense of something no child should have to understand. The waiter sets a glass of orange juice in front of him, and for a brief moment, it's just us. Just a mother and her son, sharing a quiet moment in a sea of judgmental whispers and polished cruelty. But the weight of Celeste's words still lingers, thick in the air, like the scent of oversprayed perfume and expensive champagne. I take a deep breath, steadying myself. We just have to get through the night. Celeste's voice drips with saccharine sweetness as she approaches again, her designer gown shimmering under the ballroom lights. Alex, I insist. You should help serve. You're used to it, after all. Laughter ripples through the crowd again, sharper this time, the kind that cuts deep. I keep my expression neutral, my fingers curling into my lap. Come on, Celeste, I murmur, barely sparing her a glance. At least be creative with your insults. She feigns a gasp, placing a manicured hand over her chest. Oh, darling, you wound me. I was just trying to make you feel useful. I mean, God knows you don't fit in here. Zeke grips his glass tightly, his little knuckles turning white. Vivian chuckles beside Celeste, swirling her wine. Celeste, dear, let's not embarrass the poor girl too much. She already does a fine job embarrassing herself. A familiar voice joins them. Let's not make this a scene. Dorian. He stands just a few feet away, one hand casually in his pocket, the other holding a drink. He's smirking. My stomach twists. This is what they do. They attack like a pack of wolves, knowing I'm alone, knowing I have no one to back me up. I glance at Zeke. Number I have him, and I won't let them ruin tonight for him. I exhale through my nose and look back at Celeste. I appreciate the offer, I say, voice steady, but I think I'll stick to my seat. Wouldn't want to outshine the bride. Her smile tightens, but she doesn't push further. Not yet. I should have known better than to think it was over. The whispers start slow, drifting through the crowd like a spreading infection. I heard she scammed men for money before becoming a waitress. Gold digger, apparently. That's why her ex-husband left her. My spine stiffens. Zeke's fork clatters onto his plate. That's not true! His voice is small but firm, cutting through the noise. Celeste gasps theatrically, placing a hand over her mouth. Oh dear, these rumors are terrible, aren't they? But you know what they say. Where there's smoke, there's fire. Dorian takes a slow sip of his champagne. He doesn't deny it. I turn to him, my blood running ice cold. Really, Dorian? You're just going to sit there and let them say that? He shrugs, as if none of this is his problem. I don't control what people believe. Zeke looks up at me, eyes wide with confusion and hurt. I place a hand over his, steadying him, steadying myself. Celeste tilts her head, faux concern dripping from her voice. Oh, Alex, don't be so sensitive. It's just harmless fun. I meet her gaze, cold and unflinching. Enjoy your night, Celeste. She blinks, caught off guard by my calmness. Zeke looks between us, something shifting in his expression. He sees it now. Celeste isn't just being mean. She's cruel. And for the first time, I think he understands. I take a deep breath, choosing my words carefully. Because, Zeke, some people can't stand losing to someone they think is beneath them. Zeke frowns, his small hands gripping the edge of the table. But you never lost to Aunt Celeste. I let out a soft chuckle, though there's no humor in it. Exactly. For the first time, I see something shift in his expression. Not just hurt, not just confusion. He's questioning things now. He's realizing that the world isn't always fair, that people like Celeste don't need a real reason to hurt others. I wish I could shield him from this, but I can't. The night drags on, filled with the hum of conversation and the clinking of crystal glasses. I force myself to engage in small talk with the few people who still have the decency to acknowledge me, but my mind is elsewhere. Zeke excuses himself to go to the restroom, and I remind him not to wander. I watch him disappear into the hallway, unaware that he's about to uncover something that will change everything. On his way back, Zeke slows his steps, his ears picking up voices coming from a half-open door leading to a side lounge. He recognizes them instantly, Celeste and Dorian. He freezes, something inside him telling him to keep listening. Celeste laughs, her voice dripping with mockery. She still acts like she belongs here. God, it's pathetic. Dorian chuckles. She always did have that stubborn streak. but at least we get to watch her squirm. Zeke's small fists tighten. He knows they're talking about me. Then Celeste's voice lowers, but Zeke hears every word. The best part? Matt has no idea I'm pregnant with your child. Zeke's breath catches in his throat. He doesn't move. He doesn't breathe. Did he hear that right? His father? And Aunt Celeste? His stomach turns. His hands start shaking. The voices continue, but the words blur together in his mind. Zeke stumbles back, his heart pounding in his chest. If I tell her, will she even believe me? Zeke's head spins as he grips the sides of his jeans, trying to steady himself. This is huge. Bigger than anything he's ever had to deal with. He wants to run straight to me, to blurt it out. But what if Celeste and Dorian lie? What if they twist the truth like they always do? He needs proof. His small fingers wrap around the phone in his pocket, his birthday gift from Dorian. His hands are shaking as he pulls it out. He presses record. The screen glows in the dim hallway as he captures the betrayal unfolding behind that door. His father's voice, casual and careless. Celeste's laughter, full of malice. It's all there. Zeke grips the phone tightly as he whispers, I won't let them hurt Mom anymore. As Zeke carefully sneaks back to the ballroom, his heart pounds in his chest. He has proof, but what now? He slips his phone into his pocket, his fingers still trembling from what he just heard. The laughter, the arrogance, the outright betrayal. It replays in his mind like a broken record. He glances up, searching the crowd until his eyes land on Celeste. She's smiling, laughing effortlessly, as if she hasn't just destroyed lives. Zeke's stomach twists. She's lying to everyone. Matt stands beside her, oblivious, raising a toast while Celeste clings to his arm. Dorian is just a few feet away, talking with guests, looking composed, like a man with nothing to hide. Zeke clenches his jaw. They're all pretending. He turns toward our table, his gaze locking onto me. I'm sitting there, holding my posture firm despite the whispers that swirl around me. I force a smile at a passing guest, even though I know exactly what they're saying. Not yet, Zeke whispers to himself. I need the right moment. His hands are still shaking when he pulls out his phone again. He steps behind a marble column, his heart hammering as he presses play. The voices are unmistakable. Celeste's laughter, Dorian's smug tone, and then the words that make his stomach turn all over again. Matt has no idea I'm pregnant with your child. Zeke swallows hard, forcing himself to listen. Dorian barely even hesitates before replying. Timing is everything, Celeste. Don't screw this up. It's all there. The proof. His fingers tighten around the phone. He has to show me. But when? He peeks out from behind the column and sees me sitting stiffly at the table, my hands resting on the linen cloth, my jaw tight. Guests still murmur, throwing sidelong glances in my direction. He knows I've heard the whispers. Zeke's fingers hover over the screen. He could walk up right now, hand me the phone, and let me hear it for myself. But something inside him tells him to wait. Not here. Not like this. I barely have a moment to breathe before a familiar presence blocks my path. Vivian Whitmore. She stands before me like a statue, poised, elegant, and cold. Her eyes flick over my dress, with thinly veiled disdain, before she offers a smile that never touches her eyes. Let's make this simple, dear, she says, voice smooth as silk. I exhale slowly. Oh, I doubt anything with you is ever simple. Her smile twitches, but she recovers. Slowly, deliberately, she reaches into her clutch, pulling out a crisp checkbook. She flicks it open, scribbles something down, and then tears the check out with a practiced motion. She holds it up between two fingers, like an afterthought. 50,000, she says coolly. Enough to start over somewhere else. A fresh beginning. I stare at her, unblinking. You want me to leave Chicago? My voice is even, but my fingers curl into my dress beneath the table. I want you to be smart. Her tone is clipped, impatient. Take the money, move somewhere new, and don't look back. I let out a slow, bitter laugh. And if I say no? Her lips pressed together in something resembling sympathy. You won't like the alternative. I take the check between my fingers, staring at the number scrawled in elegant ink. $50,000. I fold it in half, then again. Then, slowly, I rip it in half. Vivian's expression doesn't change, but I see the flicker of something dark in her eyes. I drop the torn pieces at her feet. I don't take bribes, not from you. She tilts her head slightly, her smile sharpening. You'll regret this. I match her gaze unflinching. I doubt that. Vivian exhales through her nose, smoothing the front of her gown, as if I'm not worth the effort of a reaction. She steps over the torn check without another word and walks away. I watch her go, my pulse steady. When I return to the table, Zeke is already there, watching me closely. He clenches his phone in his small hand. He knows what he has to do next. Zeke glances at me, his little fists clench so tightly around his phone that his knuckles turn white. I don't notice. I'm too focused on keeping my head high, pretending the stares and whispers don't pierce through me like needles. He looks past me, his gaze landing on the microphone at the front of the ballroom. His breath comes fast and shallow, but he's already made his decision. I won't say anything, but he will. His small legs move before he can think twice. The hum of conversation in the ballroom starts to die down as Zeke steps toward the stage. A waiter pauses mid-step, hesitating as if unsure whether to intervene. No one expects an 8-year-old to be part of the night's entertainment. Celeste's laughter carries through the room, the sound syrupy and false. Oh, I just adore how children always find a way to insert themselves where they don't belong. Zeke doesn't stop. My head snaps up just as the microphone crackles. Enough! His voice is small, but the weight behind it brings the entire room to a standstill. I push back my chair so fast it scrapes against the floor, but I'm frozen. Zeke grips the microphone with both hands, his face set in hard determination. Stop making fun of my mom! A stunned silence falls over the ballroom. The chandeliers above seem to hum louder in the quiet. I can't move. Celeste's smirk twitches, faltering for just a second before she forces a light laugh. Oh, sweetheart, we're just having fun. You don't need to be so serious. Zeke shakes his head. No, you're not. His voice is steady. You've never been nice to my mom. Ever. A murmur ripples through the guests. Glasses are lowered. Someone clears their throat. I see Matt's brows furrow as he looks at Celeste. Vivian's lips press into a thin line. Zeke, darling, let's not ruin such a beautiful night. Zeke doesn't flinch. He doesn't even blink. You ruined it first. His small hands reach into his pocket. My breath catches. He pulls out his phone, holding it up for the room to see. His thumb hovers over the screen. Celeste's entire body stiffens. I see it in the way her shoulders go rigid, in the way her fingers tighten around the stem of her champagne glass. Zeke's finger trembles above the play button. For the first time all night, Celeste looks afraid. The ballroom is completely silent as Zeke lifts the phone toward the microphone. Let's see what you really think, Aunt Celeste. A few muffled whispers ripple through the crowd, but most guests remain frozen in place. Champagne glasses hover mid-air, forks suspended inches from plates. Every eye is on Zeke. He doesn't hesitate. He presses play. The sound crackles through the speakers, and then, Celeste's unmistakable voice fills the room. The best part? Matt has no idea I'm pregnant with your child. The words hang in the air like a slow-motion disaster. A single gasp breaks the silence. Someone knocks over a glass. But nothing is louder than the suffocating tension that grips the room. My heart pounds as I watch Celeste go deathly pale. Matt, standing beside her, doesn't move, doesn't blink. The recording continues. Timing is everything, Celeste. Don't screw this up. Dorian's voice. A single sentence, but enough to destroy everything. Matt's champagne flute slips from his fingers, shattering against the floor. The sound is deafening against the silence. He turns, slowly, his face void of expression. His voice is eerily calm. "What did I just hear?" Celeste stammers, her carefully practiced poise unraveling before our eyes. "Matt, I can explain." But Dorian stays silent. He doesn't even try to deny it, because he knows. It's over. Matt shakes his head, as if trying to wake up from a nightmare. "Tell me it's not true." His voice wavers. "Tell me this is some kind of sick joke." Celeste swallows hard. It's not what it sounds like." A bitter laugh escapes Matt's lips. "It sounds like you're carrying my brother-in-law's child." The murmur among the guests swells into something sharper, more damning. Dorian finally exhales, rubbing a hand down his face. "Matt." But Matt's already taken a step back. "Don't." Celeste reaches for his arm, but he pulls away so fast she stumbles. "You lied to me," he breathes, his hands shaking. "Our entire relationship, you lied." Celeste's lip quivers, but for once she doesn't have a quick-witted response. Vivian suddenly surges forward, as if she can still salvage what's left. "This is ridiculous. That recording could be fake." Zeke doesn't even blink. "Then let's ask Aunt Celeste." All eyes turn back to Celeste, whose mouth opens, but nothing comes out. Her eyes dart around the room, searching for an escape, for someone to save her. Matt steps closer, his voice lower now. "Tell me the truth, Celeste." She doesn't answer. "Right now." Her lips part, but the only thing that comes out is a shuddering breath, because she knows there's nothing left to say. The walls are closing in. The perfect life she curated is collapsing, and no one, not even Vivian, can stop it. Matt inhales sharply, shaking his head. Then, without another word, he reaches for his left hand and rips off his wedding ring. It clatters against the floor, rolling to a stop at Celeste's feet. "We're done," he says. Celeste gasps. "Matt, wait!" But he's already walking away. Dorian takes a step toward the exit, but a guest deliberately blocks his path. Someone else scoffs under their breath. Unbelievable. Celeste falls to her knees, a broken sob tearing from her throat. Vivian glares at me, her composure finally cracking. "You did this!" I don't flinch. I meet her gaze head-on. "No, Vivian." I exhale, my voice steady, unwavering. "Your family did this to themselves." Matt turns to me, his voice raw. "You knew, didn't you?" I meet Matt's gaze, my expression unreadable. "I suspected. But now you know the truth." His jaw tightens, the weight of betrayal settling over him like an anchor. Celeste is still frozen, her face pale, her body rigid as if she can stop time itself and undo what's already been said. But the damage is done. Then she moves. With a desperate sob, Celeste lunges forward, grasping at Matt's hand. "Please, Matt," she gasps, her fingers clinging to him. "I made a mistake, but I love you. We can fix this." Matt doesn't pull away immediately. For a brief second, I wonder if he'll cave, if the years of history between them will override the truth. But then he exhales sharply, shaking his head. "A mistake?" His voice is eerily calm. "A mistake is forgetting an anniversary, leaving the oven on, calling someone the wrong name. This wasn't a mistake, Celeste. This was a choice." Celeste whimpers, shaking her head furiously. "No, Matt. You were never going to tell me, were you?" His voice cracks slightly. "You were just going to let me raise Dorian's child as my own." Gasps echo throughout the room. The last remnants of sympathy in the air vanish completely. Celeste crumbles. Matt turns toward the guests, running a hand over his face as if trying to scrub the humiliation away. He lets out a bitter laugh. "I won't marry a liar." The ballroom is deathly silent. Then, in a single, deliberate motion, he reaches up and rips off his boutonniere. The tiny flower falls to the floor, weightless compared to the bombshell that just dropped. Vivian surges forward. "Matt, you don't have to do this." Her voice is sharp, desperate. "She made a mistake, but we can handle this privately." Matt turns to her, his eyes blazing. You knew, didn't you? His words cut through the air like a knife. That's why you tried to pay Alex to leave. Vivian falters. The guests murmur, their curiosity sharpening into full-blown judgment. Vivian regains her composure quickly, straightening her shoulders. Darling, we were just trying to protect you. Protect me? Matt laughs dryly. Or protect the family name? Vivian says nothing, and that silence says everything. The dam finally breaks. Vivian steps back, her face tight with barely concealed fury. We can fix this, she hisses. We just need damage control. But it's already too late. Guests pull out their phones, discreetly recording every humiliating moment. I see one woman murmuring to another, shaking her head. A man whispers something to his wife, and she gasps audibly. Vivian watches it all, the realization dawning in her eyes. Her empire, her carefully crafted image, is crumbling right in front of her. Dorian, ever the coward, tries to slip away unnoticed. But someone in the crowd calls out, "Where are you going, Dad of the Year?" Laughter follows, but it's harsh and cruel. Celeste, still trembling, whirls toward Matt, her desperation morphing into rage. "You don't understand!" she shrieks, her voice cracking. "I did this for us!" Matt scoffs. "For us?" He gestures wildly. "You slept with my brother-in-law and got pregnant. You lied to me for months. How exactly was any of this for us?" Celeste clenches her fists, her eyes flashing with fury. Then, in a final act of childish defiance, she grabs a champagne flute from the table and throws it to the ground. The glass shatters, mirroring the last pieces of her dignity. "I hate all of you!" she screams. No one flinches. No one comforts her. She's alone. I exhale slowly, watching the collapse unfold. This is the end of an era. The end of Celeste's reign over my life. The end of Vivian's control. The end of Dorian's ability to slither through the cracks untouched. I feel Zeke's small hand slip into mine, his fingers tightening around mine. He looks up at me, his bright eyes filled with quiet understanding. "Let's go, sweetheart," I whisper. Zeke nods. We turn, walking past the ruins of a once flawless wedding, stepping away from the chaos, away from the years of pain and manipulation. I don't look back. But as we reach the doors, I feel someone's gaze on me. I glance over my shoulder. Matt is watching me, regret flickering in his eyes. For a brief moment, I wonder if he regrets more than just Celeste. As we step out into the cool night air, I exhale slowly. It's finally over. But as we walk toward the exit, a familiar voice calls out from behind. "Alex, wait!" I stop. My entire body tenses, my fingers tightening around Zeke's hand. I turn slowly, already knowing who I'll see. Matt stands a few feet away, his tie loosened, his boutonniere missing, and the exhaustion written all over his face. The weight of the night has aged him in mere hours. His gaze flickers to Zeke for a second, before returning to me. Zeke shifts beside me, glancing up at me, waiting for a cue. I let out a slow breath. "What is it, Matt?" He exhales, running a hand through his disheveled hair. "I should have seen through her lies," he murmurs. "I should have treated you better when we were family." I cross my arms, keeping my expression neutral. "You didn't want to see, that's the difference." A bitter chuckle escapes him. "Yeah," he says, shaking his head. "I didn't." Silence stretches between us, thick with the weight of too many things left unsaid. Finally, he looks back at me. I don't expect forgiveness, but thank you for showing me the truth. A lump forms in my throat, but I swallow it down. This isn't my burden to carry anymore. Zeke steps forward, looking up at Matt with those sharp, observant eyes of his. "You deserved better, too," he says softly. Matt's shoulders sag slightly, his expression unreadable. But I see something shift in his gaze, like he's finally realizing how much he's lost. I reach down, taking Zeke's hand again. It's time. Matt watches us for a long moment. Then, as if realizing there's nothing left to say, he asks, Where will you go? I give him a small, knowing smile. Forward. And with that, I turn away. I don't look back. We step out onto the sidewalk, the cool night air wrapping around us. For the first time in years, I feel lighter. Zeke squeezes my hand. Are we finally free, Mom? I look down at him, exhaling deeply, letting every painful memory, every betrayal, and every weight I've carried for too long leave with my breath. Yes, baby, I whisper. We are. As we step into the waiting cab, I glance back at the hotel one last time. Goodbye, Whitmores. 3 months later, I stand in front of the cafe's employee board, adjusting the small metal name tag pinned to my uniform. Assistant manager. The letters gleam under the overhead light, and for a moment, I just stare at them, letting the reality sink in. I made it. A warm hand clasps my shoulder. I turn to see Lisa, one of the senior baristas, grinning at me. You deserve this, Alex, she says. No one works harder than you. A soft chuckle escapes me. Well, 10 years behind the counter had to lead somewhere, right? She shakes her head. Number this isn't just because of time served. This is because you're damn good at what you do. I smile, feeling something I haven't felt in a long, long time. Stability. The bell above the cafe door jingles, and before I even turn around, I hear the familiar, excited voice. Mom, look! Zeke bursts inside, his backpack slung over one shoulder, waving a sheet of paper like it's a winning lottery ticket. I take it from his hands, smoothing it out. A plus. Pride swells in my chest. I ruffle his hair, watching as he beams up at me. My hero and a straight A student? What did I do to deserve you? He grins, his confidence unwavering. You raised me. My throat tightens, emotions creeping up before I can stop them. I kneel, pulling him into a tight hug. You make me so proud, sweetheart. Zeke squeezes me back, his voice muffled against my shoulder. I just did what you always do, Mom. I didn't let anyone tell me I wasn't good enough. I blink rapidly, swallowing past the lump in my throat. I don't deserve him. But God, I'll spend the rest of my life proving that I do. Later that evening, as I'm sifting through the mail, my hands stilling when I see it. A cream-colored envelope with gold lettering, Vivian Whitmore's handwriting. I sit at the small kitchen table, tearing it open with careful precision. Inside, a single card. No elaborate apology, no drawn-out justifications. Just 5 words. I was wrong about you. I stare at it, waiting to feel something. Satisfaction, vindication, closure. But all I feel is exhaustion. I let out a slow breath, flipping the card between my fingers. Then, without a second thought, I crumple it in my fist and drop it into the trash. Some things aren't worth holding on to. That night, I tuck Zeke into bed, pulling the covers up to his chin. He looks up at me, thoughtful, his eyes filled with the kind of quiet wisdom that only children seem to have. Do you think we'll be okay now, Mom? I brush a lock of hair from his forehead, pressing a kiss to the top of his head. We already are. His eyes flutter closed, his breath evening out. I step to the doorway, flicking off the light. As I stand there, watching the slow, steady rise and fall of his chest, a thought drifts into my mind, warm and unshakable. We fought for this life, and we always will be. As I stand in the quiet of my home, watching Zeke sleep peacefully, I can't help but reflect on everything we've been through. Life has a way of testing us, pushing us to our limits, and sometimes making us question our own worth. But if there's one thing I've learned, it's this. We are not defined by the people who try to break us. We are defined by how we rise after they do. For years, I allowed others to dictate my value. I let their words, their judgments, and their power make me feel small. But the truth is, no one has the right to tell you who you are or what you deserve. Not your family, not society, not the voices in your head that whisper doubt in the quiet moments. Your worth isn't up for debate. If you're going through a season of struggle, if you feel like the world is against you, hear me when I say this. Keep going. Stand your ground. Hold your head high. The people who try to dim your light are often the ones who fear your strength the most. And one day, when you refuse to break, you'll realize that the life waiting for you on the other side of the pain is one you deserve. And if this video touched you in any way, if it made you think or even made you feel something deep inside, let me know by commenting 1 below or telling me where you're watching from. If you disagree or see things differently, I want to hear that too. Don't forget to hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next story. Because life is full of lessons, and sometimes the most powerful ones come from the people who have lived them. Until next time, stay strong, stay true to yourself, and never let anyone tell you that you are less than what you are. Hi, I'm Serena. And for 10 years, I thought I was building a life with my husband, until the day he called me and said, "Pack your things and get out." Just like that. No warning, no explanation. But what hurt more than his words? The realization that our marriage had never been real. That everything, our home, our finances, even our love, had been nothing more than a carefully constructed lie. And when he told me to talk to his parents, I thought I'd finally get answers. Instead, I uncovered something so much bigger, a secret that turned my entire life upside down. How do you move forward when you realize you were never meant to win? When the people you trusted the most were the ones setting you up to fail? Because I didn't just lose a marriage, I lost the illusion of control. But what happened next? He never saw it coming. The phone buzzed in my hand, the cold metal pressing against my palm as I stared at the screen. Dorian Kane, my husband, the man I had shared my life with for nearly a decade. I hesitated before answering, something deep inside me whispering that whatever was coming next would change everything. His voice was devoid of warmth, stripped of any trace of the man I used to know. "I don't want to see you anymore. Pack your things and leave before I get home." The world around me blurred. I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. A hollow silence stretched between us before the line went dead. I stood there, gripping the phone, trying to process the words that had just sliced through my life. My vision swam, a deep, nauseating pit forming in my stomach. This couldn't be happening. My hands trembled as I redialed, the screen flashing, calling. For an agonizing few seconds before going straight to voicemail, I tried again. Nothing. Panic settled in, wrapping its cold fingers around my throat. My chest tightened, and for a brief moment, I struggled to breathe. How had we gotten here? I slumped onto the couch, staring at the city lights flickering outside our floor-to-ceiling windows. This apartment, our home, suddenly felt like an unfamiliar space, walls closing in on me. The past few months flashed through my mind like a film reel, each memory a jagged piece of a puzzle I had refused to put together. Dorian had been distant, his touch growing colder, his gaze lingering elsewhere even when we were in the same room. The late-night meetings that ran longer than they should have. The phone calls he always dismissed when I was near. The sudden weekends away for business that had no paper trail. I had ignored the signs, convincing myself that work was pulling him away, that stress was making him distant. But now, staring at my reflection in the glass, I saw it for what it was. I had been a fool. Tears pricked at the edges of my eyes, but I swallowed them down. Crying wouldn't change the fact that my husband had just discarded me like I was nothing. The sharp knock at the door jolted me. I hesitated before rising, my legs unsteady as I crossed the room. When I opened the door, a man in a navy blue uniform stood there, holding a thick envelope. "Mrs. Kane?" The name felt foreign. "Yes," I whispered. "This is for you. Please sign here." With numb fingers, I scribbled my signature, barely processing what I was doing. The moment I closed the door, I tore open the envelope. A stack of crisp white papers slid into my hands. Divorce papers. My breath hitched as I flipped through the documents. His signature was already there, ink-dried, as if he had been waiting for this moment. He had planned this. This wasn't an argument that escalated too far. This was calculated, cold, premeditated. A deep anger flared in my chest, pushing back the heartbreak that threatened to consume me. And then I saw it. A single note, written in Dorian's familiar scrawl. "If you have questions, talk to my parents. They'll explain." My pulse pounded in my ears. His parents? They had never truly accepted me. I had been an outsider, tolerated but never embraced. And now I was supposed to go to them for answers? A bitter laugh escaped my lips. This had been orchestrated. I was the last to know. The realization hit me like a freight train. I wasn't just losing my husband. I had never really had him. My gaze swept across the apartment, lingering on the framed wedding photo on the console table. Dorian's arm was wrapped around me, his smile easy, effortless. A lie I had believed in. My fingers curled around the frame. The glass shattered as it hit the floor. My heart pounded, my breath ragged. But through the haze of pain, a single thought cut through like steel. I will not go down without answers. The long driveway stretched before me, lined with towering oaks whose golden leaves swayed in the crisp autumn breeze. The estate loomed ahead, as imposing as ever, silent, cold, a relic of power and control. I hadn't been here in over a year, and yet nothing had changed. Not the polished stone steps leading to the grand double doors. Not the scent of burning wood from the fireplace inside. Not the chill in my stomach that always accompanied visits to the Kine estate. I parked, gripping the steering wheel for a moment before stepping out. My heels clicked against the gravel as I approached the entrance, my breath visible in the crisp afternoon air. The door opened before I even knocked. Eleanor Kane stood there, elegant as always in a fitted cream-colored dress, her pearl earrings catching the light. Her smile was polite, but held no warmth. "We thought you might come sooner." Of course, they had been expecting me. Bernard Kane was already seated in the study, a glass of scotch in one hand, flipping through a newspaper, as if my presence was nothing more than an appointment on his calendar. He barely looked up. "Have a seat, Serena." No fake sympathy, no feigned concern. Just bored indifference, as if my life unraveling was nothing more than an inconvenience they had to address. I sat back straight, hands resting in my lap. Why did Dorian send me here? My voice was even, but my fingers curled against my thighs. Bernard sipped his drink, finally glancing at me. "Because, my dear, this marriage was never about love." The words landed like a slap. Eleanor tilted her head slightly, watching for my reaction. When I didn't flinch, she reached into the desk drawer and pulled out a thick folder, sliding it across the mahogany surface. "You should read this." I hesitated, but then I saw it. My name, Serena Kane, printed in bold at the top of the document. My fingers were steady as I flipped it open. Prenuptial agreement. My heart pounded. I had never signed a prenuptial agreement. Yet there it was. The clauses were brutal. If the marriage ended before 15 years, Dorian retained full control of all financial assets. If I initiated the divorce, I would walk away with nothing. If Dorian filed, I would get a minor settlement, but only under certain conditions. I flipped through the pages, my stomach twisting. I wasn't just being discarded. I had been trapped from the start. I never signed this. Eleanor's lips curled into a knowing smile. "Dorian planned ahead, dear. We all did." I felt sick. This was a setup. My voice came out flat, but inside, I was burning. "Of course it was." Bernard's tone was dismissive, as if I should have known all along. "You were a suitable choice, Serena, but Dorian had other obligations." A suitable choice, not a partner, not a wife, just a piece in a carefully arranged game. I gritted my teeth, forcing my expression to remain unreadable. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing me break. Eleanor sipped her tea, watching me like a cat watching a trapped mouse. "You look surprised. But tell me, Serena, did you really think you were the first?" The air in the room seemed to thin. "What?" Bernard leaned forward, eyes sharp. "You weren't the first, and you won't be the last." It hit me then. This wasn't about love, or even convenience. This was what they did. Handpick a woman, marry her under false pretenses, keep her just long enough to serve a purpose, a merger, a business deal, an image to uphold. Then, when she was no longer useful, discard her, making sure she walked away with nothing. A cold rage settled in my chest. Eleanor set her teacup down. "We'll make this easy for you. Sign the papers, accept the settlement, walk away quietly." Bernard's voice was sharper. "There's no fight to win here, Serena. You're already out." I forced myself to stay still, to breathe, to process. I had walked into this house expecting to fight for my marriage. Instead, I had uncovered a machine designed to destroy women like me. But I wouldn't be the next casualty. I closed the folder carefully and placed it back on the desk. Then I stood, smoothing down the front of my coat, schooling my face into something unreadable. I met Eleanor's gaze, holding it steady. If Dorian planned ahead, then so will I. For the first time, her smirk faltered. Bernard watched me with something that almost resembled intrigue. I turned on my heel and walked out, stepping into the cold autumn air, gripping the prenup tightly in my hands. My breath was steady, my mind was sharp. I wasn't leaving this fight empty-handed. The rain had started by the time I reached my apartment. It wasn't heavy, just a slow, persistent drizzle that painted streaks across the glass windows, blurring the city skyline beyond. I dropped my coat onto the chair, my hands still clutching the prenuptial agreement. The paper felt heavier than it should, as if it carried the weight of every moment I had been deceived. I moved toward the kitchen, pouring myself a glass of wine with hands that didn't quite steady. The silence in the apartment was suffocating. It had always been too big, too immaculate, decorated to Dorian's taste more than mine. And now, it felt like I was standing in a stranger's home. I set the wine down and unfolded the prenup on the dining table. My eyes traced every clause, every loophole designed to strip me of power before I even knew I needed it. How had I not seen it? My mind drifted back through the past years, searching for the cracks I had ignored. Dorian always had the upper hand, always. The way he could steer any conversation, making me feel like I was imagining things when I questioned him. The way his parents gifted us vacations at the exact moments I had doubts, whisking us away just long enough for me to forget whatever had been nagging at me. And the documents, contracts, legal forms, slid in between normal paperwork. "Just sign here, babe. It's standard." I had been a fool, not naive, not inexperienced, just unaware that I had married into a family that played by a different set of rules. I sank onto the couch, running a hand through my hair. There had to be more. And then, something clicked. I grabbed my laptop and opened my email. Scrolling through years of messages, I searched for something, anything, an old connection, a thread I had forgotten to pull. Then, I saw it. Nicholas Avery. His name had appeared in a conversation Dorian had once shut down immediately. A quick search led me to a series of financial articles from nearly a decade ago. Nicholas Avery, once a powerful businessman, had vanished from the public eye after a high-profile divorce from a woman with deep family ties. Something about the case felt too familiar. I hesitated only for a moment before pressing call. The phone rang twice before a voice answered. "Who is this?" "My name is Serena Kane," I said, "and I think we have something in common." There was silence. Then a sigh. "I was wondering when you'd call." A chill ran through me. "You know who I am?" "I know what you're going through," Nicholas said, "because I went through the same thing." I swallowed hard. "Tell me everything." Nicholas didn't rush. His tone was steady, but there was something beneath it. Exhaustion, bitterness, the weight of a man who had already lost. He had been in the exact same situation. A contract-bound marriage, carefully designed to pull him in, keep him in place just long enough to serve a purpose, then discard him when the time came. The same patterns, the same tricks. "And let me guess," I murmured. "She got everything. You got nothing." "Not just nothing," Nicholas said. "They erased me." He explained how his ex-wife's family had severed his business ties, turning former allies against him. How he had been forced out of his own company, financially ruined, reputation destroyed. All because he had been stupid enough to believe it was real. I gripped the phone tighter. "This is a cycle, isn't it?" "It's a machine, Serena." His voice was grim. "And now you're the latest casualty." I let the words sink in. I could feel the anger rising, not hot and reckless, but cold and sharp, settling into something dangerous. Nicholas exhaled. "Listen to me. If you think you can beat them, you need more than just anger." "I don't need anger," I said quietly. "I need strategy." He didn't respond immediately. Then he chuckled, dark and knowing. "Good." After the call, I sat motionless, the city lights flickering against the rain-soaked windows. I wasn't just another victim. I wasn't going to disappear. I grabbed a pen and a notebook, flipping to a blank page. And I started writing. A list of every legal loophole I could use. Every person still tied to Dorian that I could turn. Every move I could make before they even saw me coming. They had built this game for themselves. Let's see what happens when someone else plays it. The next morning, the sky hung heavy with gray clouds, a mirror of the cold certainty settling in my bones. I stepped into Hastings and Lowell L.P.L., one of Manhattan's most ruthless law firms. Elliot Marston, a corporate attorney who owed me a favor, was expecting me. "Serena," he greeted, leaning back in his chair. I dropped a folder onto his desk. "Not long enough." His gaze flicked over the documents, his neutral expression hardening. "Jesus!" I crossed my arms. "Tell me something I don't know." Elliot flipped through the pages, brows knitting. "Serena, you never had a marriage. You had a contract. And the worst part? Some clauses were altered after you signed. The ink's different. This prenup was tampered with." A sharp chill ran through me. "You're saying they forged my contract?" "I'm saying you weren't meant to notice." My stomach twisted. "Who orchestrated this?" Elliot hesitated, then slid another file toward me. The name on it wasn't Dorian's. "No," I whispered. "Yes," Elliot said darkly. "Dorian's rich, but not powerful. Not like this." I scanned the documents. Bank statements, shell companies, financial transfers. This wasn't just a divorce. It was a scheme to control wealth through marriages. I was just another pawn. "Does Dorian even know?" I asked. Elliot's pause was too long. "If he does, he's as trapped as you." Anger burned away my nausea. "What are my options?" "Legally, you could challenge it, but they designed this to drain you in court." "And the smart option?" Elliot shut the folder. "Find leverage. Make them regret thinking you were an easy target." An hour later, I stepped onto the wet pavement, mind racing. That's when I noticed it. A black car, too polished, too clean. A man in a tailored suit stepped into my path. "You've done enough digging, Ms. Kane." I raised a brow. "And you are?" He ignored the question. "Take the settlement, walk away." I huffed a short laugh. "There it is." The first threat. Not a threat, a suggestion. "Or what?" His expression remained cool. "Or you'll wish this divorce was the worst thing to happen to you." I stepped forward, voice steady. "Tell your boss. If he thinks I'll roll over, he hasn't done his research." For the first time, his smirk faltered. I turned and walked away. I wasn't just fighting Dorian anymore. The city hummed around me as I walked, the weight of what had just happened settling into my bones. I had been threatened before, but this was different. This wasn't personal. It was business. And that made it far more dangerous. I hailed a cab, ignoring the way my hands clenched into fists in my lap as we weaved through traffic. I needed more than speculation, more than anger. I needed proof. By the time I reached Archer and Webb Investigations, my pulse had evened out, my mind sharp again. This was where the real fight started. The office smelled of stale coffee and old leather, a stark contrast to the sleek law firms I was used to. Private investigators weren't interested in appearances. They were interested in results. The man behind the desk barely glanced up from his laptop. James Archer, a former NYPD detective turned private investigator, rumored to have dirt on half the city. "You came to the right place," he said, finally looking at me. "But that doesn't mean you're gonna like what you find." I pulled out a folder and slid it across the desk. "I need everything on these people. Bank records, offshore accounts, any deals they don't want in the open." James flipped through the pages, eyebrows raising slightly. "This isn't about a cheating husband, is it?" I shook my head. "It's about power." His lips twitched. "Good. That means it's worth my time." For the next hour, I watched as he pulled up files, cross-referencing names, searching records that weren't exactly public. Then, something shifted. His expression darkened as he leaned closer to the screen. "Well, well, well. Looks like your ex and his family are dirtier than I thought." I leaned in. "What did you find?" "Shell companies," he said, scrolling through the records. "Money laundering through fake investments. And get this, your name is tied to one of them." My stomach dropped. "What?" "They didn't just screw you in the divorce, lady. They used you. Your accounts, your name, your business. Everything was a front for them to move money." I swallowed hard. "So they didn't just use me, they laundered through me." James nodded. "If this gets out, it won't just be a divorce case. It'll be a federal investigation." I sat back, gripping the armrests of the chair. I had come here looking for leverage. Instead, I had found a loaded gun. As I left the office, my mind raced through the possibilities. I had two options: take this information and use it to crush them in court. Go public and let the government do the job for me. Either way, the Canes would lose. I barely had time to process before I saw it. The black car. Parked across the street, waiting. I kept walking. I had expected them to send someone, but not so soon. Not so obvious. The same man from before stepped out, his expression unreadable. "I told you to walk away." I crossed my arms. "And I told you I don't take orders." His jaw tensed. "You have no idea what you've started." I stepped closer, lowering my voice. "No," I whispered. "You have no idea what I just found." His eyes flickered, just for a second. "Gotcha." I didn't go straight home. Instead, I pulled out my phone and made the one call that would change everything. "Elliot," I said when my lawyer picked up, "get ready to file. We're tearing this contract apart." The game had officially started. Elliot didn't waste time. By the time I stepped into his office the next morning, a fresh legal motion was already waiting on his desk. Fraudulent financial activity, misconduct in contractual agreements, intentional asset concealment. This wasn't just about my prenup anymore. "Dorian won't see this coming," Elliot said, flipping through the paperwork. His smirk was sharp. "He thought he was covering his tracks. He didn't count on you fighting back." I leaned forward. "File it." He nodded and picked up the phone. "Let's make his morning a disaster." By noon, my case was officially in motion. The lawsuit challenged the entire foundation of the prenup, citing fraud and financial manipulation. If it went through, Dorian wouldn't just lose his settlement leverage, he'd lose his entire financial standing. For the first time in days, I felt the smallest rush of victory. And then, an email from Elliot's office shattered it. Dorian was prepared. He had moved assets weeks before filing for divorce. Bank accounts were drained, stocks were transferred. Everything liquid had been restructured under different holdings. A preemptive countermeasure. My stomach twisted as I scanned the details. He had been planning this long before he made that phone call telling me to leave. I clenched my fists, my breath coming in short, controlled exhales. So he was always 2 steps ahead. I wasn't surprised, but I was angry. I slammed my laptop shut. I needed to hit him harder. That evening, as I paced my apartment, my phone vibrated. Anonymous message. "I can help." "Meet me." I froze, staring at the screen. It wasn't a number I recognized. I hesitated, fingers hovering over the keyboard, debating whether this was a trap. Then I typed 2 words. Where? The bar was dimly lit, the kind of place that catered to people who didn't want to be seen. I stepped inside, scanning the room until I spotted a lone figure sitting in a booth, watching me. I slid into the seat across from him. "Who are you?" I asked, keeping my voice even. He smirked. "Someone who used to believe in Dorian." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a USB drive, setting it on the table between us. "Dorian thinks he's untouchable," he said, voice low. "Let's change that." I picked up the drive, my fingers tightening around it. "What's on here?" "Proof," he said. "Offshore accounts, illegal transfers. The money he moved before filing? This shows where it went, and it's not clean." My pulse pounded. This wasn't just leverage, this was evidence. I met his gaze. "Why are you doing this?" He exhaled slowly. "Because I trusted him, and I lost everything." I nodded once. "Welcome to the club." I got back to my apartment and plugged the USB into my laptop. The files loaded instantly. Bank transactions, wire transfers, dummy corporations, a meticulous paper trail of fraud, money laundering, and financial deceit. I took a steady breath. Then I pulled up my email. 2. Elliot Marston, subject, new evidence attachment, confidential files. I hit send. Then I opened my messaging app and typed a single sentence. "You wanted to play games? Let's play." Seconds later, Dorian's name lit up my screen. I let the call go to voicemail. Then I poured myself a drink and leaned back in my chair, watching the city skyline. Now let's see how he reacts when he's the one losing. The morning passed in silence, except for the occasional ding of my phone as news alerts rolled in. Kane, financial faces legal battle amidst divorce scandal. Dorian Kane, accused of financial misconduct, insider leak? Who is Serena Kane? The woman bringing a financial empire to its knees. I smirked. The game was no longer played in the shadows. Then came the knock. Hard. Repetitive. Angry. I knew who it was before I even opened the door. Dorian stormed in the moment I unlatched it, his jaw clenched, eyes blazing. He looked nothing like the composed, untouchable man he had always been. This was someone on the verge of losing control. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" His voice was sharp, laced with barely concealed panic. I crossed my arms. "Yes." I took back control. He let out a bitter laugh, pacing the room like a caged animal. "You think this is some kind of revenge story? You think you can win against people like us? Then why do you sound so desperate?" I tilted my head, watching him closely. He stopped, his nostrils flaring. "You have no idea the kind of mess you've just stepped into, Serena." "Oh, I think I do," I said coolly. "The real question is, do you?" Then his phone rang. His entire demeanor shifted. His gaze darted to the screen before he quickly stepped away, lowering his voice as he answered. "I can fix this." "No, I didn't know she had the files. I swear, I felt my stomach turn. He wasn't scared of me. He was scared of them. When Dorian turned back, his rage had drained, replaced with something I rarely saw in him. Fear. "Who was that?" I asked, though I already had an idea. He didn't answer. I stepped forward. "Looks like I'm not the only one being played." His hands balled into fists. "You don't understand what you've done." "Then enlighten me." For the first time, he hesitated. And that told me everything. The pieces began falling into place. The offshore accounts, the silent business partners, the deals I had never been privy to. I had assumed Dorian was the one pulling the strings, but he wasn't. Someone bigger, someone powerful, someone who controlled even him. This wasn't just a divorce anymore. "This isn't just about us, is it?" I asked, my voice quieter now. Dorian's jaw tightened. He gave me one last unreadable look before turning and walking out the door. For the first time, he didn't have a smug parting shot. The elevator ride was silent, except for the faint hum of the mechanics shifting behind the polished steel walls. 34th floor. I stood still, staring at my reflection in the mirrored panels. The woman staring back was calm, composed, but not the same woman who had walked into this mess. The door slid open. A receptionist, dressed in a sleek black suit, gave me a practiced smile. "Ms. Kane, they're expecting you." Of course they were. She gestured toward a set of large double doors at the end of the corridor. My heels echoed as I walked. Each step was measured, deliberate. No hesitation, no fear. I pushed the doors open, and there they were. Not just an investor, not just a silent partner. Someone I had known for years. Someone who had watched me fall apart and had done nothing. The real mastermind. The smirk on their face was calm, calculating. "Well, Serena, I was wondering when you'd figure it out." I lowered myself into the chair across from them, my hands steady as I set my bag beside me. "So, it was you." They leaned back. "You always were smart. Too smart, actually. That was the problem." My stomach twisted, but I didn't let it show. "This wasn't about money," I said slowly. They tilted their head, amused. "No, dear. It never was." I swallowed the anger bubbling in my chest. I wasn't going to let them see it. "Then what?" They exhaled as if they were speaking to a slow student who had finally caught up. "This was never about Dorian. He's just a convenient pawn. Disposable, really." My jaw clenched. "Then who was the real target?" Their eyes darkened. "Your father." A slow chill ran through me. "My father has nothing to do with this." "Oh, but he does." They leaned forward. "You see, years ago, he made enemies. Powerful ones. He thought walking away would be enough. But people like us, we don't forget, Serena." My throat tightened. "So you used me." "Not used, positioned." They shrugged. "The marriage? Just a tool. A way to ensure that what your father built would be dismantled piece by piece. Dorian played his part. And you? You were never meant to last long." I felt the sharp sting of betrayal dig deep, but I forced myself to exhale, keeping my hands relaxed. "And now?" I asked. They slid a folder toward me. "Now, we end this cleanly. Take the settlement, disappear, and you'll walk away with more than most do." I glanced at the papers. An easy way out. A golden parachute. A way to make me disappear. I ran my fingers over the crisp edges, pretending to consider. Then, I slowly pushed the papers back across the table. "No deal." For the first time, their smirk wavered. I reached into my bag, pulling out a small USB drive and sliding it across the table. "You built a system so powerful, you thought no one could break it. But here's the thing." I leaned in, watching their eyes narrow. "I already sent these files to the DOJ." Silence. A long, tense silence. Then, their fingers drummed once against the table. "You think that's enough?" I smiled. I think it's just the beginning." 3 months later, I sat in the cold, rigid wooden bench of a Manhattan courtroom, watching as the remnants of my past unraveled before me. Dorian sat at the defense table, his hands clasped, a hollow look in his eyes. He wasn't the man I once knew, the charming, composed executive who had convinced me that our life together was built on something real. No, this version of Dorian was smaller, stripped of his arrogance, left only with the weight of his own choices. The prosecutor stood. "Mr. Kane, can you confirm the existence of the offshore accounts linked to your firm?" Dorian hesitated. His lawyer leaned in, whispering something, but he only exhaled heavily before speaking. "Yes." His voice was flat, resigned. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. "And can you confirm that these accounts were used to funnel money through fraudulent investments? Investments tied directly to your prenuptial agreement?" Dorian's jaw clenched. He looked down at his hands before nodding. "Yes." I felt no victory in his downfall. This wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about setting things right. The judge cleared his throat, straightening the papers in front of him. "Given the evidence presented, this court finds that the prenuptial agreement is void, as it was predicated on fraudulent financial activity. Furthermore, Mr. Kane is to remain under federal investigation for financial crimes related to Kane Financial. The gavel struck. It was over. Dorian turned slightly, looking at me from across the room. His eyes were tired, no longer burning with the anger or entitlement I had seen before. "I never had a choice," he muttered. I studied him for a long moment before responding. "Neither did I, until now." I walked out of the courthouse into the crisp fall air, inhaling deeply, trying to shake the weight of it all. As I reached the steps, my phone buzzed. A single message. "You won this round, but be careful where you step next." I exhaled slowly. Even behind bars, the mastermind still had reach, but this time I wasn't afraid. I stared at the message before typing a response. "I don't play by your rules anymore." And I hit send. Months later, I stood in my new apartment, overlooking the skyline of a city that didn't know my name. The furniture was sparse, the walls still bare, but this space was mine. No contracts, no hidden agendas, no carefully planned moves designed to trap me in someone else's game. I had spent too long inside their world, playing by their rules, trying to survive in a system that was never meant to be fair. But now I was building my own. I let out a small breath, one I hadn't even realized I'd been holding, and stepped forward, leaving the past behind me where it belonged. For the first time in years, I was free. As I stood by my window, looking out at the city lights, I realized something. Life doesn't always give us the choices we want, but it does give us the chance to take back control. The truth is, we are always one decision away from changing everything. It's easy to let others dictate our worth, to let relationships, careers, or even society tell us what we deserve. But the moment you decide to break free, the moment you refuse to be a pawn in someone else's game, that's when real power begins. Maybe you've been in a situation where you felt powerless. Maybe you've trusted the wrong people, believed in something that turned out to be a lie. But know this, you are never as stuck as you think you are. There is always a way forward. And if this video resonated with you, if it made you think or even feel something, drop a 1 in the comments. Tell me where you're watching from. And if you didn't like it, tell me why. I want to know. Don't forget to subscribe. This is just the beginning. I'll see you in the next one. Hi, my name is Isolde, and this is the moment I realized I never truly belonged. At my sister's engagement party, I was prepared to endure the usual cold stares, the whispered conversations behind my back. But what I wasn't prepared for was looking down at my name tag and seeing the word staff printed in bold letters. I wasn't a guest. I wasn't family. I was nothing to them. And the worst part, my own husband just stood there, silent. For years, I swallowed my pride, convinced myself that if I just tried hard enough, I would earn their respect. But that night, in front of Boston's elite, they made one thing clear: I would never be one of them. So I made a choice. I walked out. But that was only the beginning. The grand ballroom at the Fairmont shimmered under the golden glow of chandeliers, reflecting off crystal glasses and polished marble floors. Laughter and clinking glasses filled the space as Boston's elite moved effortlessly between tables, exchanging pleasantries that meant nothing. I adjusted the sleeve of my navy dress, glancing at my reflection in the glass of a nearby display case. I looked like I belonged here, or at least I had tried to, but the truth had a way of creeping in, pressing against my ribs like a too tight corset. I wasn't one of them. The knowledge sat heavy in my chest as I scanned the room, searching for Callum. He was deep in conversation with Julius Whitmore, Seraphina's fiancé, who was charming as always, his confidence effortless, his presence magnetic. Unlike Callum, Julius had never made me feel like an outsider. A delicate laugh cut through my thoughts. Seraphina. She was draped in an emerald green gown that was undoubtedly designer, her perfectly curled blonde hair cascading down one shoulder. A ring of admirers surrounded her, hanging on to her every word. The entire night revolved around her, just as she had always wanted. "Ah, there you are." Vivienne's voice slithered into my ears before I saw her. My mother-in-law's presence always felt like a shadow I could never quite step out of. She stood beside me, a glass of champagne in hand, her smile as pristine as the pearls around her neck. "I must say, you do clean up well," she said lightly. "That dress almost makes you look like you belong." I didn't react. I had learned to let her words pass over me like a bitter wind. She took a slow sip of her drink. "I assume you're used to working events like these, dear. You are a nurse, after all." I gripped my clutch tighter. From the corner of my eye, I saw Serafina's group watching us, smirking behind their cocktail glasses. "She's so practical," one of them whispered. "Callum really married beneath him," another murmured. The sting of their words settled into my skin like tiny cuts. I turned to Callum, standing just a few feet away, but he didn't meet my gaze. He had heard them. He had heard his mother, and still, he said nothing. I swallowed past the lump in my throat. This wasn't new, it was just more of the same. A waiter appeared beside me, interrupting the moment. "May I have your name, miss?" I blinked. "Oh, The receptionist at the entrance desk held out a name tag for me. I took it automatically, my fingers brushing against the glossy surface, and then I saw it. Staff. My heart lurched. A slow, sickening wave of realization washed over me as I read it again. Staff. Not Mrs. Hayes, not guest, just staff. Laughter rippled through Serafina's group. "Oh, what a mix-up," Serafina said, eyes wide with mock innocence. "But you do serve others, don't you?" My throat burned. I turned to Callum, desperate for him to step in, to do something, but he hesitated. The moment stretched unbearably long, his silence louder than any humiliation Serafina or Vivian could ever throw at me. The air around me felt suffocating, the noise of the ballroom fading into a dull hum. The weight of every dinner, every slight, every time I had swallowed my pride to be a part of this family pressed down on me. My fingers clenched around the name tag. Vivian watched me with a smirk, swirling her champagne. "Oh, don't take it so personally, dear. It's just a joke." Joke. I let out a slow breath. And then I ripped the name tag off my dress, the sound sharp and satisfying in the quiet that had settled around me. I placed it back on the check-in desk, smoothing my dress with deliberate care. Then, without another word, I turned on my heel. As I stepped toward the exit, I heard Callum's voice. Hesitant, uncertain. And in that moment, I knew exactly where I stood in his life. "Isolde, wait!" Callum's voice chased after me, but I had already made my decision. I stepped out into the cold Boston air, my heart hammering in my chest. The ballroom doors shut behind me, muffling the sounds of laughter, clinking glasses, and Serafina's delighted whispers. My heels clicked against the pavement as I moved toward the valet stand, my breath coming in sharp, uneven bursts. Callum caught up, grabbing my wrist just before I reached the curb. His grip was firm, desperate. "Please don't just leave like this," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "It was just a mistake." I turned to face him, my body trembling, not from the cold, but from the sheer weight of everything that had just happened. The humiliation, the whispers, the way he had stood there and done nothing. A mistake? My voice came out sharper than I intended, but I didn't care. "You saw the name tag, Callum. You saw how they looked at me." I ripped my wrist from his grasp, my chest rising and falling with ragged breaths. "And you stood there and said nothing." His jaw tensed. "I didn't want to make a scene." A bitter laugh escaped me. "You didn't want to make a scene," I repeated, incredulous. "They reduced me to a servant at my own sister-in-law's engagement party, and you were worried about making a scene?" He raked a hand through his hair, his frustration bubbling just beneath the surface. "Isolde, this isn't easy for me either." I took a step back, studying his face. The man I had married, the man I had loved. "Why, Callum?" I demanded. "Why do you let them treat me like this? Like I'm nothing?" He hesitated. And in that hesitation, I saw everything. The truth. The part of our marriage I had refused to acknowledge. I can't just go against my mother. His voice was tight, like the words were being forced out of him. "Not like this." I inhaled sharply. "Because she controls you, financially." He flinched. It was all the answer I needed. "Jesus, Callum." I took another step back, shaking my head in disbelief. "So I'm worth less to you than her money? That's not—" He cut himself off, exhaling sharply. "You know it's more complicated than that." "Complicated?" My voice cracked. "It's actually really simple. You either love me enough to stand up for me, or you don't." Silence. A heavy, suffocating silence. I let out a slow breath, my decision settling over me like a wave. "You don't have to choose, Callum," I said, my voice quieter now, "because I'm making the choice for you." I reached for my left hand and slowly slid my wedding ring off my finger. Callum's eyes widened. "Isolde." I placed it in his palm, curling his fingers over it. "Goodbye, Callum." Then I turned and walked away. Behind me, I heard his sharp intake of breath, but he didn't stop me. He didn't say a word. I had barely reached the street when shouting erupted from inside the ballroom. I paused, turning just in time to see the heavy double doors swing open. Julius Whitmore stormed outside, his face dark with barely contained fury. Serafina followed close behind, her perfectly composed mask cracking. "This is who you are, isn't it?" Julius's voice was sharp enough to cut glass. "Petty, cruel, desperate for validation." Serafina tossed her hair, forcing a laugh that didn't quite land. "Oh, please, you're overreacting." "No," Julius said, shaking his head. "I'm finally seeing the truth." A murmur rippled through the guests spilling onto the terrace, their curiosity piqued. Vivienne appeared in the doorway, her expression carefully neutral, though I saw the tension in her jaw. Julius turned to the crowd, his voice carrying through the chilly night air. "There will be no wedding. I refuse to be part of this family's twisted games." A collective gasp swept through the onlookers. Serafina's face paled. "Julius! Wait!" But he was already walking away, his mother, Margot, following with a satisfied smirk. Vivienne's fingers twitched around the stem of her champagne flute, her carefully constructed world beginning to fracture before her eyes. And for the first time since stepping into that ballroom, I felt something close to relief. I had walked away. But was it truly over? The city lights blurred as I stood there, gripping my phone, waiting for it to ring. But it didn't. I exhaled, the cold air biting at my skin. My body ached from exhaustion, my mind replaying every moment of the night before. The humiliation, the whispers, the name tag. The way Callum had hesitated when I needed him the most. I wasn't sure why I was expecting him to call. Maybe out of habit. Maybe out of hope. Hope that he'd finally choose me, that he'd fight for me the way I had spent years fighting to be part of his world. I swallowed hard and slipped my phone back into my coat pocket. Enough. By the time I reached my hotel room, the weight of the evening settled into my bones. I hadn't planned to stay here, but the thought of returning to the house I shared with Callum felt unbearable. That house wasn't a home anymore. Maybe it never had been. I peeled off my dress and let it pool at my feet, stepping into the hotel robe as I sat at the edge of the bed. My bare ring finger caught my eye. I turned my hand over, tracing the faint indentation where my wedding band used to be. It felt foreign, like I had shed a piece of myself along with it. A lump formed in my throat, but I forced it down. No more tears. The silence of the room was suffocating. No messages, no missed calls. I was done waiting. Callum stood in the grand foyer of the Hayes estate, his hands shoved deep into his pockets. The weight of the night had left him drained, his mind still spinning with the image of Isolde walking away. He hadn't followed her. He should have. Now he was here, standing before his mother, who sat poised in the high-backed chair by the fireplace, sipping tea as if nothing had happened. "I assume you've had time to think, darling," Vivienne said without looking up. Callum clenched his jaw. "Why did you do it?" His voice was raw. "Why humiliate her like that?" Vivienne exhaled softly, finally meeting his gaze. "Because she doesn't belong, Callum. She never has." His stomach twisted. "That wasn't your decision to make." "Oh, but it was," she said, placing her teacup down with a delicate clink. "You've spent years living in two worlds, trying to appease both. That ends now." Callum stiffened. Vivienne studied him for a long moment, before leaning back in her chair. "I need to know where your loyalty lies. You have a choice to make." Callum's pulse pounded in his ears. "Stay with her, and you lose everything," she continued. "Choose your family, and I'll ensure your future is secure." A slow, suffocating silence filled the room. Vivienne lifted her teacup again, her gaze sharp over the rim. "So, what will it be?" Callum swallowed, his throat dry. For the first time in his life, he wasn't sure he had an answer. I sat by the hotel window, watching the city buzz below. Boston had never felt more foreign to me. I had spent years trying to carve out a space for myself in Callum's world, trying to prove that I belonged. But the truth was glaring now. I never had. I never would. I exhaled, resting my forehead against the cool glass. I had been waiting for Callum to fight for me, waiting for him to choose me. But why should I keep waiting? I had spent so much of my life making myself smaller for others, dimming my light so I wouldn't outshine the people who wanted me to stay in their shadow. No more. I turned away from the window, reaching for my phone. I wasn't waiting for Callum anymore. The choice had already been made. The moment I stepped onto the plane, I felt something I hadn't in years. Freedom. As the engines roared to life, and the city lights of Boston blurred beneath me, a strange sense of peace settled in my chest. For the first time in years, I was untethered. No expectations, no obligations, no more shrinking myself to fit into a world that had never wanted me. I closed my eyes and let my head rest against the seat. I didn't have a plan, not really. I had booked a one-way ticket to New York City without a second thought. I just needed to be somewhere that wasn't there. Somewhere I could breathe. Boston had been suffocating. Callum had been suffocating. I exhaled, long and slow. By the time the plane touched down at JFK, the weight on my chest had lightened, just a little. A week passed in a blur of movement, long walks through unfamiliar streets, coffee in small corner cafes, the hum of the city filling the silence that had once been Callum's voice in my ear. New York felt like a fresh start. No one here knew me as Callum Hayes' wife, or Vivian Hayes' disappointment of a daughter-in-law. I was just another woman trying to figure out what came next. I sat by the window of a quiet cafe in Greenwich Village, watching the rain drizzle against the glass, the warmth of my coffee cup seeping into my hands. My mind should have been racing with all the things I needed to do. Find a new job, a place to live, build a life outside of the ruins I had left behind. Instead, I just sat there, existing, and it was enough. My phone vibrated on the table, breaking the moment. A number I didn't recognize. For a split second, my heart leapt to the possibility that it was Callum, that he had finally woken up, realized what he had lost, I clenched my jaw. Then, without hesitation, I hit decline. No more waiting. In Boston, Callum stood in the grand library of the Hayes estate, his mother seated elegantly across from him. The tension in the air was suffocating. Vivian sipped her tea, her posture unshaken. "You've had time to think," she said, not a question, but a statement. "I trust you've made the right decision." Callum's hands curled into fists at his sides. For years he had played this game, walked the careful line between duty and desire. He had bent to his mother's will, convinced himself that it was just easier to go along with things rather than fight against them. But he had lost Isolde, and for the first time, he wasn't sure if he could live with that. "I'm done, Mother." His voice was steady, unshaken. Vivian's expression didn't falter, but something in her grip on the teacup did. "Darling," she said smoothly, "let's not be dramatic." Callum exhaled sharply, shaking his head. "I don't want your money. I don't want your games. And I sure as hell don't want to be controlled anymore." Vivian's lips pressed into a thin line. "You need me," she said simply. Callum's jaw tightened. "No," he said. "I really don't." And just like that, he turned and walked away. Vivian didn't call after him, but as he reached the door, he heard the sharp clink of porcelain hitting the saucer a little too hard. Boston's high society was an unforgiving place. By the end of the week, whispers had begun to spread. Margot Whitmore made sure of it. With Julius's dramatic exit at the engagement party, the carefully constructed image of the flawless Hayes family had begun to splinter. Vivian's invitations to events dried up. Calls from friends went unanswered. Suddenly, the women who had once clung to her every word were too busy to meet for lunch, too occupied to return messages. Money had never been Vivian's only weapon. Her power had always been in her influence. And now, it was slipping through her fingers. She had underestimated the fallout of humiliating the wrong people. She had underestimated me. I sat on the rooftop of my tiny rental apartment, the city stretching out before me in endless waves of light. The phone buzzed beside me. This time, I checked the screen. Callum. My chest tightened. For a long moment, I just stared at the name, my thumb hovering over the screen. Then I exhaled, turned the phone face down, and let the night swallow the silence between us. But just because I had moved on didn't mean the past was done with me. New York had become a refuge, a place where I was rebuilding myself piece by piece. I had found a small apartment, nothing extravagant, but it was mine. I had started looking for work again, sending out applications to hospitals and clinics. For the first time in years, I felt like I was the one in control of my life. I sat in a waiting room, my resume clutched in my hands, preparing for an interview at a well-respected hospital in the city. A fresh start. No one here cared about the Hayes name, about where I came from, or about what I had left behind. The moment my phone buzzed, my stomach twisted instinctively. I glanced at the screen. Unknown number. I hesitated for only a second before swiping to answer. "I was wondering when you'd finally pick up." A familiar voice sneered through the line. "Serafina." My grip on the phone tightened. "You think you can just walk away?" she hissed, venom dripping from every syllable. "After everything you've done?" A slow exhale left my lips. "I haven't done anything, Serafina, and we both know that." "You ruined everything," she snapped. "My engagement, my reputation, my life." I closed my eyes, steadying myself. No, Serafina. You did that all on your own. Her breath came uneven through the line. You're going to regret this, she spat. I let the silence stretch between us before answering, my voice calm. Number, I won't. Then I hung up. For the first time, I didn't feel anger toward Serafina. Just pity. Boston was no longer kind to Serafina Hayes. The moment Julius walked away from the engagement, the carefully curated world she had built around herself began to crumble. Her so-called friends no longer answered her messages. Her social media following plummeted. Invitations stopped arriving. The expensive lifestyle she had flaunted, the designer dresses, the lavish vacations, suddenly felt hollow without an audience to admire them. For years, she had lived in a bubble where she was adored, envied. Now she was just another scandal, another cautionary tale whispered about at charity galas. And she blamed me for all of it. The glass in her hand shook as she took another sip of champagne, curled up in the dimly lit lounge of her mother's estate. They should be humiliating her, she muttered under her breath. Not me. Vivian, standing at the window, barely glanced at her. Composure, Serafina, she said coolly. Whining won't fix anything. Serafina scoffed. And what's your plan, mother? Sit there and pretend this isn't happening? That Julius's family isn't dragging our name through the mud? Vivian's fingers twitched around her glass, but her voice remained controlled. Julius and Margot can make as much noise as they like. It doesn't matter. Serafina let out a bitter laugh. You really think that? She reached for her phone, swiping through article after article, all plastered with headlines about the Hayes downfall. Vivian's gaze flickered, and for the first time in years, Serafina saw something in her mother's eyes that she never had before. Doubt. The headlines broke the next morning. Boston socialite, Vivian Hayes, under investigation for financial misconduct. Hayes family fortune, under scrutiny, millions in question, former business partners come forward. Vivian Hayes deals exposed. The moment I saw the news notification pop up on my phone, I knew. Margot. She had followed through with what she had promised. For years, Vivian had operated in the shadows, keeping her financial dealings under tight control, ensuring that nothing could ever be traced back to her. But Margot Whitmore had money, power, and, most importantly, connections. And when someone like Margot decided to take you down, there was nowhere to hide. Vivian's bank accounts were frozen. Her closest allies in Boston's social scene distanced themselves overnight. She had spent decades building an empire, and in a matter of hours, it had collapsed. Callum sat at a cafe in the Back Bay district, staring blankly at the newspaper in front of him. He had known his mother played dirty, but even he hadn't been prepared for this. The phone in his hand felt heavier than it should. He knew he should call her, demand to know the truth. But deep down, he already knew. Vivian had spent years warning him about people like Isolde, telling him that she was nothing more than a gold digger. And yet, the real con artist had been under his roof all along. He closed his eyes, exhaling through his nose. How had he been so blind? Vivian sat alone in her estate, a half-empty glass of wine in hand, watching her empire crumble. The world outside was turning against her. The walls were closing in. But she wasn't finished just yet. She picked up her phone, dialing one last number. The smear campaign against me started the very next morning. I woke up to my phone vibrating relentlessly against the nightstand. A flood of missed calls, unread texts, and email notifications cluttered my screen. Something was wrong, very wrong. My stomach twisted as I opened the first message. Isolde, have you seen the news? You need to. My breath caught. Tapping on the link, a headline in bold letters nearly made me drop my phone. Gold-digging nurse destroyed one of Boston's most powerful families? My pulse pounded as I skimmed through the article. It was vile, full of anonymous sources and twisted half-truths. It painted me as a manipulative woman who had preyed on Callum's wealth, driven Julius to break off his engagement, and orchestrated the downfall of the Hayes empire. She played the long game, one source claimed. She knew exactly what she was doing. Another section speculated about my marriage to Callum. Sources close to the family say Isolde never truly loved Callum Hayes. She was always after the status. Once she got what she wanted, she discarded him and moved on. Every word was a carefully crafted lie, designed to make me look like the villain. I gripped the phone so tightly, my fingers ached. Vivian. This had her fingerprints all over it. At the hospital, whispers followed me down the hall. Nurses I had barely spoken to suddenly knew me. Some gave me sympathetic glances, others avoided eye contact altogether. I felt my professionalism slipping, my hands trembling as I prepared to check a patient's vitals. The weight of their stares clung to me like a second skin. By lunchtime, my supervisor pulled me into her office, concern written all over her face. "I'm sure you know why I called you in," she began. I nodded stiffly, my jaw clenched. "The hospital board is worried about the attention," she sighed. "You're a great nurse, Isolde, but if this continues, we might have to reevaluate your position here." Anger flared up, hot and undeniable. I had worked my entire career with integrity. I had spent years earning my place in this field. And now, because of Vivian's desperate need for control, I was at risk of losing it all. I refused to let her win. That evening, I made a call of my own. "Vivian wants a war?" I said to the lawyer on the other end. "Then let's give her one." 2 days later, Margot Whitmore called me. "I warned you about Vivian," she said smoothly. "But this is desperate." I pressed the phone against my ear, staring out over the New York skyline. "She's trying to salvage what little power she has left." Margot chuckled. "Then she's made a mistake. Because when people like Vivian get desperate, they get sloppy. And sloppy means vulnerable." She wasn't wrong. Vivian had always been calculating, careful never to leave behind evidence. But a smear campaign this public? She had gone too far. "I hope you're ready," Margot added, "because if I know Vivian, she won't stop here." I smiled, but it didn't quite reach my eyes. "Neither will I." Callum stood at the entrance of the Hayes estate, his fists clenched. He had spent years defending his mother, making excuses, justifying her cruelty because that was easier than admitting the truth. But this was unforgivable. His own mother had destroyed the woman he loved. And for what? To protect a reputation that was already in ruins? The moment he stepped inside, he found her in the grand sitting room, sipping her usual evening tea, as if she hadn't just tried to ruin someone's life. She glanced up at him, unbothered. "Callum, how nice of you to visit." His anger boiled over. "What the hell did you do?" Vivian sighed, setting her teacup down. "Is that really how you greet your mother?" Callum didn't take the bait. "That article, the lies about Isolde, you're behind it." She didn't deny it. Instead, she tilted her head slightly, regarding him like a misbehaving child. "You're upset. I understand. But Callum, this is how the world works. She embarrassed our family. There are consequences." Callum let out a harsh laugh, shaking his head. "You don't get it, do you?" Vivian raised a brow. "Get what?" His voice dropped, filled with something lethal. "You don't have a family anymore." For the first time, Vivian's expression faltered. Callum turned, his steps heavy as he walked toward the door. But just before he stepped out, she spoke again. Her voice calm, unshaken. "I did what I had to do." Callum didn't look back. "And now? You can live with it." Then he was gone. Vivian sat motionless, the crackling fireplace the only sound in the vast emptiness of the estate. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached for her wineglass. She had lost everything, but she wasn't finished just yet. A slow smirk curved her lips as she picked up her phone and made one last call. Margot's warning came the next morning. "Isolde, she's planning something worse." I gripped the phone tighter, my knuckles turning white. I was standing in my tiny kitchen, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee lingering in the air, but suddenly I had lost my appetite. "Define worse," I said, my voice low. Margot sighed on the other end. "She's going after your career. The smear campaign was just the beginning. She's contacted your hospital's board, claiming you've engaged in medical malpractice. She wants to make sure you never work again." A sharp pang shot through my chest. I had expected Vivian to retaliate, but this was a new level of cruelty. Destroying my reputation in high society was one thing, but trying to take away the one thing I had left? My job? My livelihood? My voice was calmer than I felt. "Do you have proof?" "Not yet. But I know Vivian. She's probably feeding them just enough fabricated evidence to make them question you." My stomach churned. The hospital board had already been wary of the media storm surrounding me. If Vivian gave them even the slightest excuse, they wouldn't hesitate to cut me loose. I exhaled, trying to steady myself. "Then I'll fight." Margot's voice softened. "Be careful, Isolde. She's desperate, and desperate people are dangerous." I hung up, my mind already racing. By the time I arrived at the hospital, a strange energy hummed in the air. Some of my colleagues glanced at me with uncertainty. Others avoided eye contact entirely. It was happening. I barely had time to drop my bag before my supervisor called me into her office. The moment I stepped inside, I knew. Dr. Hughes, the hospital administrator, sat across from me, his expression unreadable. "Have a seat, Isolde." I did. He folded his hands together on the desk. "You're aware of the situation surrounding your name in the press?" I nodded, forcing myself to remain composed. Dr. Hughes sighed. We've received an anonymous report accusing you of improper patient care, fabricating records, and violating hospital protocols. The words felt like a slap. That's a lie, I said immediately. Be that as it may, the board has to investigate. His gaze flickered to the file in front of him. These claims are serious. We need to determine if there's any validity to them before making any decisions regarding your employment. My pulse pounded. This was exactly what Vivian wanted. To make me look guilty, to bury me under so much scrutiny that even innocence wouldn't save me. I looked toward the other person in the room, Dr. Patel, a colleague I had worked with for years. She had always been fair. She had always trusted me. Now she hesitated. It was subtle, a brief flicker in her expression, before she nodded and said, I've never witnessed any misconduct from Isolde. The hesitation gutted me, because it meant that someone, even someone who had always believed in me, had doubted. Vivian had done that. I swallowed past the tightness in my throat and sat straighter. I want to see the allegations, every word of them. Dr. Hughes nodded. You'll be provided access during the review process. I exhaled slowly. Then I'll wait. But in my mind, I was already planning my next move. Back in Boston, Callum stared at the headlines with a growing sense of fury. Hospital under pressure to fire disgraced nurse Isolde Hayes, the woman who took down Boston's elite. He shoved the newspaper aside, disgust curling in his stomach. This wasn't just about his mother anymore. She was actively destroying Isolde's life, and he wasn't going to stand for it. Within an hour, he was standing at the gates of the Hayes estate. He stormed into the house, past the butler who stammered out a greeting, and found his mother in the sunroom, sipping her usual afternoon tea. Vivian barely glanced at him. Darling, must you always barge in like some common brute? Callum slammed the newspaper onto the table in front of her. What the hell is this? Vivian sighed, picking up the paper with a delicate hand. Oh, Callum, you're so dramatic. His blood boiled. You're trying to destroy her. Vivian set the newspaper down and folded her hands neatly in her lap. No, darling, I'm ensuring she never comes back. Callum's fists clenched. You've gone too far. Vivian raised an eyebrow. Have I? You don't get to decide who I love, he said, voice like steel. You don't get to manipulate people's lives because you didn't get your way. Vivian's eyes darkened. I did what I had to do to protect our family, and you're too blinded by her to see it. Callum shook his head. You don't have a family anymore, Mother. Vivian stilled, but Callum didn't wait for a reaction. He turned and walked away. This time, he wasn't looking back. I sat across from my lawyer, gripping the evidence in my hands. Printouts of every false claim, every email, every planted rumor Vivian had used against me. She thought she could bury me. She thought she could erase me. She was wrong. This wasn't just a fight for my reputation anymore. It was a fight for my future. Vivian never backed down from a fight. But neither did I. The morning my legal team officially filed the defamation lawsuit against her, the media went into a frenzy. News anchors debated the case, tabloids dissected every detail, and social media turned into a battleground. Some still called me a gold digger, a woman who had infiltrated an elite family and destroyed it from the inside. But others, many others, were starting to see the truth. Boston's Ice Queen faces court battle. Has Vivian Hayes finally lost control? Exclusive. Lawsuit filed against Hayes matriarch for malicious defamation. Vivian Hayes' empire in ruins. Was it all a lie? I sat in my apartment, watching as the headlines rolled in. This was what Vivian feared most. Not losing money, but losing power. The battle lines had been drawn, and this time, I wasn't the one backing down. Serafina's world was falling apart faster than she could keep up. She sat in her penthouse, scrolling through an endless stream of ignored messages. Brands that once showered her with designer clothes and lucrative deals had gone silent. Her bank accounts, once limitless, now showed restrictions. Her mother had promised they would win, but Vivian was losing. And now, so was she. The moment she realized her last credit card had been frozen, panic set in. She picked up her phone, dialing a number she never thought she'd call. Julius, please, she whispered, swallowing her pride. I just need to talk. His voice was cold, distant. There's nothing left to say, Serafina. The line went dead. Her vision blurred as she stared at the empty screen. For the first time in her life, there was no one to rescue her, and that terrified her. She exhaled shakily, fingers tightening around the phone. There was one way out. She knew how this world worked. When the powerful fell, they always took someone else down with them. Serafina took a deep breath and called a journalist. The next morning, the world woke up to the biggest headline yet. Serafina Hayes breaks silence. My mother manipulated everything. I nearly dropped my coffee. Serafina had turned on Vivian. I clicked the article, scanning the bold words. I was raised to be perfect, to be obedient. But the truth is, I was just a puppet. My mother orchestrated everything, the engagement, the humiliation of Isolde, the media attacks. And now that it's falling apart, I refuse to go down with her. I leaned back in my chair, exhaling slowly. Vivian had spent years crafting an empire of influence, controlling everyone around her. Now, the only person who could have saved her, her own daughter, had set fire to the last of it. Vivian sat motionless in her grand estate, staring at the screen. Serafina's face, once her pride and joy, now stared back at her with cold detachment. Her own daughter had betrayed her. She set the tablet down, pressing trembling fingers to her temples. The phone calls had stopped. The invitations had dried up. She had been erased. For the first time in decades, Vivian Hayes had no power, no control, no allies, just herself. And for the first time, that wasn't enough. I stood by the window of my apartment, the city stretching out before me. The battle was over. Vivian had lost. I had won. But as I stared at my reflection in the glass, exhaustion settled deep in my bones. Because even when the battle is over, the scars remain. In the aftermath of everything, I had one final decision to make. The lawsuit was nearing its conclusion. My legal team had gathered overwhelming evidence, and Vivian's lawyers had started pushing for a quiet settlement rather than a drawn-out trial. Public perception had shifted. The same media that once labeled me a manipulative gold digger now called me the woman who took down Boston's most powerful matriarch. But none of that mattered in this moment. Because as I sat in my small apartment, sipping coffee and looking out at the Manhattan skyline, my mind wasn't on Vivian, the case, or the headlines. It was on Callum. He arrived in New York unannounced. I had just finished a long shift at the hospital when I stepped out into the cool evening air and saw him leaning against a street lamp across the road. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then, slowly, I walked toward him. "Hey," he said, his voice softer than I remembered. "Hey," I echoed. I had imagined this moment so many times, had rehearsed all the things I wanted to say, but now that he was standing in front of me, I found myself at a loss. He looked different. Not in the physical sense. He was still the same Callum, tall and composed, his hands shoved into his coat pockets like he was bracing for the cold. But there was something in his eyes I hadn't seen in years. Clarity. "I cut ties with my mother," he said without preamble. I studied his face, searching for hesitation, doubt. But there was none. "I don't want the life I had before," he continued. "I don't want the money, the name, the expectations. I just—" He exhaled, his breath visible in the crisp night air. "I want a future with you, Isolde." His words should have felt like a victory. But instead of answering, I just stood there. For so long, I had waited for him to choose me. And now that he finally had, I wasn't sure what I wanted anymore. "I don't know, Callum," I admitted quietly. "I don't know if we can go back." His expression flickered with something, regret, maybe, or understanding. "I'm not asking to go back," he said. "I'm asking if there's a way forward." Vivian sat alone in the grand estate she once ruled. The curtains were drawn, the chandeliers dimmed, the vast house empty. For weeks she had fought, tried to salvage her reputation, called in every favor she had left. But the doors she once walked through so effortlessly had now shut in her face. The whispers of admiration had turned into murmurs of disdain. Even those who had feared her once now avoided her entirely. She reached for the phone, hesitating only a moment before dialing. The call went to voicemail. She tried again. Still nothing. Vivian set the phone down, her manicured fingers trembling against the polished mahogany table. Serafina had cut her off. Her own daughter. Once, Vivian had controlled Serafina's every move, shaped her into the perfect reflection of the Hayes legacy. But now, Serafina was no longer taking orders. And for the first time in Vivian Hayes's life, she had no one left to command. Serafina, meanwhile, sat in a small upscale cafe, nursing a cappuccino. She had received the calls, of course. She had seen her mother's name flash across her screen more times than she could count. And for the first time in her life, she ignored them. She wasn't innocent, not by any stretch. She had played her part in the cruelty, reveled in it, even. But watching her mother fall had been like watching herself in 20 years. And she wanted more than that. For now, she was alone. Not the center of attention, not the darling of Boston's elite, not the woman everyone wanted to be. Just Serafina. And maybe, just maybe, that was a start. Callum and I walked through Central Park in silence, the faint hum of the city around us. I'm not asking for an answer right now, he said finally. I just needed you to know where I stand. I nodded, inhaling the crisp autumn air. There was still love here, I knew that. But love had never been the problem. Love hadn't stopped Vivian from destroying me. Love hadn't stopped Callum from hesitating when it mattered most. Maybe love wasn't enough. But for the first time in my life, I was choosing myself first. Life has a way of testing us in ways we never expect. For years, I thought love meant sacrificing pieces of myself to fit into someone else's world. I thought that if I stayed, if I endured, if I just proved my worth enough, I would finally be accepted. But the truth is, acceptance should never come at the cost of your own identity. Walking away wasn't just about leaving a toxic family, it was about reclaiming myself. I learned that waiting for someone to choose you will only leave you empty. You have to choose yourself first. I learned that standing up for your truth may cost you everything, but losing yourself is an even higher price to pay. So let me ask you, have you ever been in a situation where you stayed silent just to keep the peace? Have you ever sacrificed your happiness to fit into someone else's expectations? At what point do we finally say, enough? I want you to take this story as more than just entertainment. Take it as a reminder that you are worth more than the spaces that try to diminish you. Your voice matters, your boundaries matter, and no one, no family member, no partner, no job, has the right to take that away from you. If this story resonated with you, let me know in the comments. Drop a 1 if you've ever had to fight for yourself, or tell me where you're watching from. And if you didn't connect with it, that's okay too. Let me know what didn't work for you. Most importantly, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss more stories like this. Because at the end of the day, we all have a story to tell, and I can't wait to share more with you.